you can download all of their public domain data. I went there and I looked at the technetium-99 data from about the 2010 to 2020 time frame. I downloaded all that data and I looked at individual monitors. And what's astounding about this is here's the monitor A37 Otway, far southwest of the plant. The levels of Tech-99 found in the air in Otway are practically the same as they were at all of these close by monitors. And what that is saying is that this stuff went out as a gas and it went far and wide during this LT clean-out time. That stuff contaminated probably all of Pike County and part of northern Scioto County and who knows where. We don't know. We do not have a good handle on how far it went. If we could go ahead. So this is the Pegasus system. I urge you to go there and take a look yourself. Another thing that I've been interested in is the substance neptunium. Neptunium as a chemical element is very long-lived. It has a 2 million year half-life, but it has some water solubility to it. It forms this species, this chemical form that likes to go into solution in water. And I started looking at Pegasus and I found some of DOE's data. There's a plume of neptunium contamination by the former X701 building. I downloaded some of DOE's data and they report a detect of 1.48 picocuries per liter. That's actually quite high. But they have some interesting things that they do with these data points. I think that these are detects that they are calling non-detects because they don't want them to be detects, because they don't want to be able to they do not want to have to say that this contamination is there and there is a plume. If they say, oh, it's only this 1 point, then they can say, oh, well, it's a one-off, it's not a plume, okay? So this is discharging from this area of the site, going into Little Beaver Creek and into the Scioto River. If we could go ahead. This is just looking at, here's the detect, and I have my suspicions. Look at this packet of data in this one, and look at the blue points. These are all non-detects according to Pegasus. I'm not so sure about that, my friend. We can go ahead. Same thing. I told Pike County here, you ought to go to Ohio EPA and US EPA. Tell them to have an enforceable standard of 0.15 picocuries per liter. So Ohio EPA or US EPA, if you're listening, why have you not set a standard of 0.15 picocuries per liter for neptunium in water? You have it as a problem on this site. Why aren't you setting that as a standard? Where's that number coming from? Well, DOE stipulated to that in the legacy management agreement at Rocky Flats. For plutonium, 0.15 picocuries per liter is the standard. We can go ahead. Well, I found some other interesting things about neptunium. Vinacali has this document, and Bobby Vaughn has this document, and they got this from both those guys. And the date on this is December 30th, 1976. And if you look at this, it's talking about, we got a serious neptunium problem on our plant and it's leaking into the creek. So they knew about this in 1976, and in 2019, they're telling you it's coming from global fallout. Okay? Think about it. Well, what's DOE's response been? This is an old slide, so this I haven't updated. This is from last year, but once I opened my mouth about neptunium in water, DOE stopped posting any data on Pegasus on neptunium. Go ahead to the next slide. On the other hand, the Department of Energy seems to know quite a lot about neptunium, and they spend quite a lot of money studying it. Here's a paper. Brian Powell is at Clemson University. He basically makes his living off of DOE funding, studying neptunium, works with Savannah River. I believe Peruski is now at Oak Ridge National Labs. But the long and short of this is that neptunium has a propensity to go into solution and to migrate in water. That is the bottom line of this paper. DOE spends millions of dollars studying that, and they've known about neptunium in the water at Portsmouth since the 1970s. You know, I looked at that memo and I said, I was an undergraduate student. I was a freshman in college when they wrote that memo. That's how long ago it was. Did DOE ever come to you and talk about neptunium in your water? I don't think so. Go ahead. So we've been looking, and so you may know where Little Beaver Creek is, and here's Big Beaver Creek, and then it goes this way towards the Scioto River. I've done some sampling in this area when I first came to Piketon, and I've now analyzed 2 sets of samples, one from Vinacali and one from Elizabeth Lamerson, 2 different people at 2 different points of time. We've found neptunium in it, and usually the concentrations are so low that you have to work at it to do work, but I was able to use 20 milliliters of water. One of the samples that Vina took is enough volume to detect neptunium. That's shocking. That is shocking. Anyway, neptunium is present in these off-site waters near Portsmouth, and it's, if we could go ahead. One of the things that's worrisome here is it's possible that neptunium is going up into plants and into the food chain, okay? This is a very old report, and it's talking about translocation of neptunium and a bunch of other things by a wheat crop. If we go ahead to the next slide here, the long and short of it is neptunium has a much greater propensity than does plutonium and these other ones to go into plants. So I would worry about this. Well, what about Tech-99? Well, Tech-99 is even worse. Tech-99 goes into plants, and I think you can expect to find it everywhere around here in the water, in the plants, in the animals, and in human tissues. All right, if we could go ahead. So a couple more stories to share here. I know I'm pretty long-winded, and I hope you've found it worthwhile to listen, but I want to tell you about some recent results from Charles or Chick Lawson's house. So I acquired a sample of dust from Chick Lawson's attic that Chick and Dwayne Pullman sampled. This was in one of the Fallout television episodes. And I analyzed this at NAU. And long and short of it is, it's very simple declarative sentence. Attic dust collected from your residence contains enriched uranium. The attic dust contains the isotope uranium-236. That's the synthetic one that's specific to Portsmouth. We also found neptunium, and no, the neptunium's not from nuclear weapons testing. So there's definitive evidence of nuclear fallout, not from weapons tests, but from Portsmouth. So here's a pitch for going to Local 12's website and looking at some of that footage. And here's some results from that report. Here's a ratio of atoms, neptunium over plutonium. If this was from global fallout, that number would be about 0.47. Instead, it's about 8 to 10. No can be, but that is global fallout. Neptunium in Lucasville. Think about Lucasville is about 10, 11 miles south of here. This plume is pretty big, and I don't think we have a good handle on how far it goes yet. And we can see in Chick Lawson's attic dust that it's mixing between naturally occurring uranium is down here, and there are different flavors of enriched uranium found in different wipes collected from his attic dust. And Little Beaver Creek sediment also has enriched uranium in it. It's a little bit different, and so on. And we also found this graph here is kind of showing, well, if it's from atomic testing, it ought to be in here. If it's from Portsmouth, it ought to be here. And that's where it is. Okay, one more thing I can tell you about here is I've also worked with Jeff Walburn, who's here today, and I thank Jeff for his collaboration. Jeff sent me some hats and a balaclava that he wore on the job. Jeff was a security guard at the former gaseous diffusion plant. And so these pieces of fabric that he wore on the job for hundreds and thousands of hours, they're kind of acting like a dosimeter in a way. They're soaking up gases and particles from the air which they come into contact with. Think of it as it's like going to the bowling alley in the old days when everybody smoked at the bowling alley, and you'd come home and you'd smell like that smoke. It's on your clothes, it's on your person. So these objects contain very high levels of enriched uranium. And so I guess that means that people who were in the building, working in the building, were breathing that. This is proof of, direct proof of occupational exposure. All right, so some of the take-home messages that I have is uranium isotopes are kind of like a truth serum. Not everybody likes to hear the news that the contamination exists. I know of people that are upset that I'm not finding contamination. I don't know what to say, but if it's not there, it's not there. I'm using the truth serum. I'm not in the business of doing risk assessment and assessing radiological hazards. I am interested in following trails of breadcrumbs, seeing where the contamination comes from. Where does it go? I focus on the questions that are more like, does this come from there? And I would say that pretty much anywhere around here, maybe within 10 miles, I don't know how far, but pretty much anywhere around here, we can expect this contamination to be present everywhere in the environment, in the ambient environment, off-site, near the facility. I don't have a good understanding now how far it goes, but it's in Lucasville and it's in Otway. It goes that far at least, and it's certainly in many locations right around here. So the geographic extent is not well known. Okay, we could go ahead. So what the community can do, I would say you can't really solve this problem. All you can do is really have an intelligent response to it, not a solution. But an intelligence response would be really to take the matter into your own hands. The DOE and all of its contractors in the state, US EPA, Ohio EPA, all of those agencies, all the elected officials are not going to do a thing to help you. They are not on your side in this quest here. You need to assume responsibility, my friends in the community. You need to you are responsible. If you want to live here, if you do live here, you need to understand and monitor your own environment. You need to assume that responsibility. Do not count on them. I think the record of decades shows we do not want to count on those people. You should work with your neighbors, assume responsibility, limit your exposure, mitigate hazards that you can identify. I work, and I will help you in these things. I work with affected communities to assist you in understanding your environment. I help people with environmental monitoring through a citizen science-based approach. So lots of ways for citizens to monitor their own environment. Fugitive dust sampling is very easy. You just wipe with a baby wipe on a smooth surface. There's your sample. I incinerate it and look for the breadcrumbs. It's as easy as that. We can find it. And all of these places are all releasing lots of particles into the air. Okay, if we go ahead. This is a homemade high volume air monitor that I'm working with. I have one of these set up in a couple of locations in the US. This is from Harbor Freight. It's about 89 bucks. And it plugs into AC power. It draws 1,700 CFM through it. And you put a piece of filter on the inlet side of this, and you collect the material. There's your air sample. We go ahead. This is another technology that I'm working on that's battery powered. I got a pretty good finger wag from my wife, and she says, you better take that off and get your own blankety-blank leaf blower. Do not use my leaf blower. But the idea here is this is a portable air monitor. The N95 mask is serving as the filter. This is the inlet. It's blowing out that way. And on one of these 4 amp hour batteries, it'll run about 20 minutes, something like that. But you can walk around anywhere and collect air samples that way. This is 1 week on the Harbor Freight air monitor. So I take that and analyze that material. And another thing, if you're interested in water contamination, there probably are little mollusks that have calcium carbonate shells that grow in the Scioto River. Somebody out there might be interested in going and collecting those. Their skeletons will contain whatever uranium was in the water. They sample, they're biomonitors of the contamination. This is from the Nolichucky River. And at NAU, we are just in the business now with a new mass spectrometer that's going to do better things for us. I'm looking at it as I have 10 plus years of future technological viability with this instrument. It's now installed. I'm learning how to use it. To date, we have not made any Tech 99 measurements, but it's coming. It's coming. And this is my email address. I want to warn you that emails sent to NAU are subject to the Arizona Open Records Act. And so what you should do is send me your name and your phone number. If you want to contact me about collaboration, send me your name and your phone number, and I will call you, and we will get a dialogue going on Signal or something like that, because this email is discoverable. I just want to end by thanking a lot of people, some of whom are here today. I want to thank Vina Colley and Michael Ballard, Bobby Vaughn, Terry Lodge, Chick Lawson, Jeff Walburn, Steve Lettingham, Dwayne Pullman, and all of the members of the Ohio Nuclear Free Network have contributed greatly to this. One more slide, and I want to thank my hosts at NAU and the Ingram research team that I collaborate with. There's a little room where I call the balls and strikes. So thank you for listening, and we'll go, I guess, to the next talk.
So wow, thank you, Dr. Ketterer. If you have questions for Dr. Ketterer, write them down on your papers and put them to the end of the row, I guess to this side or wherever, and people will collect them. And then we will have all the questions at the end of all the speakers. So we'll have as many questions as we have time for, I suppose. So. All right, so we have your introduction yet. So I'm going to introduce Joe Mangano, who unfortunately could not be here today due to family illness, but we are pasting him in from Ocean City, New Jersey. So he's the person that if you picked up a study from the 7 counties. This is a new study. It's being released today, and it's a study of health effects from the Centers for Disease Control, where he's put together statistics. He'll tell you about this. But anyway, his background is he's an epidemiologist, and he's the executive director of the Radiation and Public Health Project. And they specialize in the study of radiation and health effects. He is the sole author and co-author of 39 articles in peer-reviewed medical journals, and is the author of 3 books. He has conducted numerous analyses of local trends in cancer and other diseases and that occur after nuclear reactors begin operation. Joe has managed the study, the only study of in-body radioactivity near U.S. nuclear plants, namely the study of strontium-90 in thousands of baby teeth. The Radiation and Public Health Project is also the recipient of 100,000 baby teeth from the Washington University in St. Louis, Missouri. Baby teeth were donated by families in the 1960s for a study that has documented buildup of atom bomb test fallout in bodies. The Radiation and Public Health Project is a contractor in a National Institutes of Health grant that was given to Harvard University School of Public Health. The Radiation and Public Health Project is studying later life health effects of bomb fallout using strontium-90 levels in teeth, while Harvard is studying health effects of early life exposure to metals. Joe has made numerous public presentations, including one at a 2013 symposium on the Fukushima meltdown, and he gave this at the New York Academy of Medicine. He holds a master's degree in public health from the University of North Carolina and a master's in business administration from Fordham University. Okay, so let us welcome Joe Mangano.
Thank you, everyone, and good afternoon. I am going to speak to you today about the results of 2 reports done in recent months, which show dramatic declines in the health of the Pike County and surrounding areas. Specifically, that the area has changed from a low cancer to a very high cancer area, and two, that the death rates from all causes have moved from just slightly above the US to one of the highest in the United States. And I will discuss the conclusion that radiation exposures from Portsmouth is likely to have played a major role in these changes. Last year, the ONFN group approached us and with a very basic request. They wanted to know what cancer rates were near Portsmouth. And the reply I gave them was that these changes. Very little is known about this topic. Last year, the 80 years of the atomic era, there's only been one federal study with a very basic request. They wanted to know was done what the cancer rates were near the National Cancer Institute. And the only at the insistence of Senators that very little is known about this topic. Since then, 80 years has tried to pick up there's only been one. We have done federal number of cancer in nuclear plants. It was done that in the late 1980s were similar to what the National Cancer Institute did. Take only at the insistence of Senator Edward Kennedy. Local cancer rates compared to it is an outdated United States. Since then, we have done reports tried to a number of areas, not all of them by any means, but we have done a number of areas, in Georgia, New Jersey, and New York, and really were similar to what Michigan, National Cancer Institute did. Take a look over generally, we have found that local cancer rates compared to the United States, a nuclear plant. We have done reports in a number of areas, not all of them by any means, but a number of areas. In Georgia, New Jersey, and New York, and Massachusetts, and Michigan, and Illinois. And generally, we have found that in the period before a nuclear plant.
Can you hear us?
Yes, I don't, but I can.
We're getting
Mute the live stream.
we're getting quite a big delay. We're still hearing you talk.
Okay, I have the live stream open, and
Do you have the live stream open?
I don't, but I can.
Can you mute the live stream?
I do have it open now. I mute the live stream. How do I mute the live stream? Okay, I have the live stream open, and here's my mute button. I don't, I can.
Oh no,
I do have it open now.
I don't know what's happening.
Recording stopped.
How do I mute the live?
Recording in progress.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, we should have everything resolved. That was AQ&R, and thank you for bearing with us.
Great. Shall I start from the beginning?
Yes, if you don't mind.
Sure. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me here. I'm going to be speaking about two reports done in recent months that document dramatic declines in health in the Pike County area. Specifically, I'm going to inform you of the findings that the area changed from a low cancer to a very high cancer area, and to be speaking that it changed about an area where the death rate was just slightly above the US. Played a major role in this decline. Last year, the ONFN group approached me and asked a very basic question. What are the here? And I didn't have much of an answer for it because there have been very, very few studies on this very basic and important topic, because, as we know, radioactive chemicals are carcinogenic. In fact, there's only been, in the entire 80-year atomic era, there's only been one study by the federal government of cancer near nuclear plants. That was done in the late 1980s by the National Cancer Institute at the insistence of Senator Edward Kennedy, and thus it is outdated. There have been no studies since then. After that, our group has tried to pick up the slack and have done a number of studies looking at this topic. We've done them in nuclear plants in Georgia, in New Jersey, in New York, in Michigan, in Illinois, Massachusetts. We've generally taken up on what the NCI did and took the ratio, how much above or below the national rate the local rate is over time. And we generally find that in the years before the plant opens and in the early years of operation, that the local rate is either about the same or maybe a little below the national rate, but that as time goes on, the local rate gets higher and the gap grows over time. Found that in almost every study. So the first report, which was issued in November, looked strictly at Pike County. The NCI study included Pike County, Portsmouth, and used Pike County as the target county. And we know that exposures from Portsmouth are most likely to be greatest in Pike County. So we found several things. First of all, cancer incidence, which is the rate of newly diagnosed cases of cancer, which the Ohio State Cancer Registry has been collecting since the 1990s, were low in the late 1990s, slightly below the US, but now the Pike rate is the highest of any of the 88 Ohio counties. Pike has the highest cancer rate in the state, and that's the period 2010 to 2019. The next thing we identified was cancer mortality, and we were able to go back to 1950 because of the NCI study. And the NCI found that before the Portsmouth plant began and in its early years of operation, the Pike cancer death rate was 12% below the US. Now, I'm going to share my screen if I'm allowed to. All right, well, maybe I'll just start talking then, but please remove the disabled screen sharing. After the 1960s, the county rate of cancer mortality got close to the U.S., and after 1990, it went higher, and now it is 30% above the U.S. and and the I'm gonna have to do this without, unfortunately, without screen sharing. And now it is 30% higher, and for premature cancer deaths, people under 75, it's 50%. Finally, let's take a look at all-cause mortality. In 1990, the Pike rate was just barely over the U.S. rate. Now it is 42% higher, and for people under 75, again, the premature death rate, the Pike rate is 85% above the U.S. 100% would be double. Okay, and so that means Pike is close to being double, which is one of the highest in the United States. All right, that report was discussed with ONFN, and it raised a number of questions. The one question is this just Pike County in which we're seeing these trends? And then secondly, are these trends due to the fact that it is in Appalachia, that it is a relatively high need area? So I produced a second report. It has just been released today. It is on it, and the first report are on our website, www.radiation.org. And okay, we looked at some. We changed. Here's where I'm going to share my screen. I think I've got it. Okay. All right. I hope this can be viewed. Instead of just Pike County, we took 7 counties in southern U.S., which you can see here in the red, the pinkish red. These are all clustered together. Everyone lives less than 50 miles from the plant. Many live much closer. And we compared them with 6 other counties in Ohio, which were similar. They had similar population density, mostly small town and rural areas. Similar in that about 95% of the population is white Caucasian. Similar in educational levels, the percent of people without health insurance, percent unemployed. So, in other words, we're comparing Appalachia close to Portsmouth with Appalachia far from. And we found several things. First of all, of the 7 counties closest to Portsmouth, the cancer incidence, as I just told you, in Pike County is the highest, the first highest in Ohio, but also they contain the second highest, third highest, fourth highest, sixth highest, and the other 2 counties are in the second 10. The highest cancer rates, incidence rates in the state are in this area, no question. Then we go along and look at what I said earlier for Pike County. These are death rates for all causes combined for people age 0 to 74. The CDC defines this as premature death rate. And you see two lines, and there's a number of dots. Each of these dots are 5-year periods, beginning in the late 1960s and ending in 2020. The red line represents the counties closest to Portsmouth, and the blue line are the control counties. And you can see early on, years ago, that there wasn't much difference between the two, and that they were just above the US, maybe 10% higher than the US. And we can also see that as time has gone on, that gap has grown. Okay, most recently, the 7-county area is 77% above the US. I had said that Pike is 85%. The other counties aren't quite as high as Pike, but they are extremely high and much higher than the control counties. Found the same thing. It's the exact same graph, age 0 to 74 by 5-year periods, not for all causes, but for all cancers combined. You can see that for a while, the two lines are pretty much similar. They were about 10% above the US, which you'd kind of expect. But in recent years, the gap has grown. And now the counties near Portsmouth 61% above, and the control counties 26% above. Finally, the highest rates of death compared to the US in these 7 counties are people age 25 to 54. And if you can see the number on the side, the most recent in the most recent period, in those 7 counties, the rate was 109% above the US, which is more than double. 100% would be double. This is 109%. The control counties are high too. They're 47% higher, but there's a big gap there. And that gap between the red and blue lines in this and the other graphs answer the question, is it just Appalachia? Well, the answer is it's partly the fact that it's Appalachia and poor and otherwise have health needs and concerns, but it doesn't explain it completely. Also in the report, we looked at what are these people dying of, especially those 25 to 54. The rates are high for, let's call them non-medical causes: homicide, suicide, accidents, including drug overdoses. But they are also very high in infectious diseases, in cancers, in diseases of the heart, diseases of the lung, diseases of the digestive system, and the urinary system. Just across the board, these rates are high, and they weren't high years ago. They were quite normal. So, in conclusion here, again, we find that the concerns that were raised are not just in Pike County, but go across Pike County borders. We can say with pretty strong certainty that this is just not a matter of a location in Appalachia. And we also really have no other apparent cause here. I mean, cancer and reasons for death have many factors and many causes, but there's nothing that juts out that has changed drastically in the last 40 years or so. But we do know that 40 or 50 years ago that the Portsmouth plant had just been running for a short period of time, and now it's been a long time since it's opened. And as Mike Ketterer showed you, there has been radioactivity in the environment, in the air, and the water, and the soil for quite some time. I want to make, before I close here, I want to make a point. I've presented words and numbers and graphs. These are real people, okay? Anytime we talk about someone dying, or someone who developed cancer, or someone who died prematurely, each and every one of these is a great tragedy, which we as public health professionals should do everything in our power to prevent and reduce. The numbers of these people are quite high. We're not talking, those dots don't represent 2 or 3 people. In the 7-county area, over 250,000 people live. So we're talking about thousands of people who are affected. So in closing, these reports raise more questions, but they should be a matter of great concern to people and to the leaders, to regulators, and to elected officials who are charged with making sure that operations such as the Portsmouth plant do not harm the health of local residents. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll be very glad to answer any questions you have.
Let me know when the live stream can hear me.
I should. This is good.
Okay. All right. Oh, we're back. Great. So, yeah, we can't thank Joe enough for his expertise in doing this work. 2 studies, one released last November, and this one now just being on the 7 counties, just being released today. And the one that was released in November is just about Pike County. And there is an executive summary back on the table that you could pick up from the summary of his new report is back there. So please take one. Okay, I'm ready to introduce Terry Lodge. Terry is a longtime environmental and civil rights lawyer in Toledo. And over his 44-year legal career, has represented protesters opposing nuclear power and nuclear weapons. Some protesters also opposing mountaintop removal, coal mining, fracking, and its radioactive waste, and as well as war. He values free speech, freedom of association, and the protest rights of activists above every other constitutional right. He worries about the privatized censorship of dissent on corporate social media and the money equals megaphone problem that was given to the corporations in the Citizens United Supreme Court decision of 2010 that declared corporations to be people. Terry currently represents scores of activists opposing Nuclear Regulatory Commission's licensing of proposed nuclear spent that's used nuclear fuel dumps from across the country. Those would be going to Texas and New Mexico. He has legally questioned the nuclear weapons implications of centrist manufacturing high assay low enriched uranium, otherwise known as HALU, at the Department of Energy site here in Piketon. He's part of a working group to keep corroded and dangerous Palisades nuclear plant, keep this Palisades nuclear plant on Lake Michigan permanently shut down, despite attempts at a corporate bailout of the already closed reactor. He also works with the Irwin Citizens Awareness Network in Tennessee, opposing a new high-enriched uranium purification line at Nuclear Fuel Services. That's the name of the company, Nuclear Fuel Services. And this would threaten both public and worker health with additional radiation. Currently, he has appealed to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to deny the license based on potential groundwater contamination and also the worker contamination and also nuclear weapons proliferation. So we'd like to welcome, oh wait, I have to say, Terry gets his kicks driving his ancient pickup truck in holiday parades, draped with banners announcing that nuclear weapons violate international law. So we're proud to have Terry here today.
Could I have a little bit of overhead light as opposed, well, the overhead light to sort of compensate for the searchlight? No. Yeah, that ancient pickup truck broke down yesterday en route to Piketon from Northwest Ohio. Sometimes ancient isn't so good. So you've heard two very serious scientists talking about what's happening regionally around Piketon and in southeastern Ohio. I've been litigating and crusading against commercial nuclear power and weapons for more time than I care to think about, but since the late 1970s. And it's kind of interesting to think about. The early themes that they called us tree huggers for verbalizing were radiation is forever and we all live downwind. And the problem that distinguishes what's going on here from a nasty factory that's pouring PCBs into the river is radiation is, for all intents and purposes, forever. You think about the half-lives of hundreds, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. We're talking about any new activity in the nuclear enrichment or processing arena being layered on top of 70 years of history at Piketon. It isn't going away. It's hardly diminishing during that 70 years. And in fact, it's spreading. It's spreading by water, by air, by the food chain, by the forest chain, by animals.
Recording stopped.
I may not look like I'm older than 30, but the fact is that I grew up in Madison, Indiana. I was born in 1950. And when I was about 4, I remember the construction of this gigantic coal-fired power plant, 3 760-foot stacks in the hill country of southern Indiana. And within a year after it opened, approximately 1955, I became a terrifically asthmatic child. And in an era when asthma was not very well diagnosed and certainly not very well treated. And for years after that, I was on medications and all that. When I finally moved away as an adult, the asthma largely has vanished. But I remember asking my mother when I was approximately 5, what are all those towers going across the Ohio River? Madison, incidentally, is a beautiful historic town right on the Ohio River, 65 miles downriver from Cincy. It's about 150 miles from here. And I've never been to Piketon, but I remember asking my mother, what are the electric lines, what is all that for? And she said, it's all the electricity is going to a place in Ohio. And I don't know much more than that. So 20 or so years later, when in the mid-70s, I began in grad school and law school in Toledo. I learned about the Davis-Besse nuclear power plant, and I came across the mention of the Portsmouth gaseous diffusion plant and Piketon, and finally made the connection. The Kiger Creek plant in Ohio and Clifty Creek plant in Madison, Indiana, were generating 100% of their power, 2,000 megawatts, to enrich uranium for the nuclear power industry and for various and sundry errands, I believe, that the Atomic Energy Commission and the DOE put them onto. It's just sort of an interesting connection, and I'm happy to finally be in Piketon and talking about this. But I want to talk about the future. So you've heard what the legacy is so far, what activities running back 70 years mean for the fact of all of us and all of you who live downwind. The American centrifuge plant, the Centrus plant here, is the only licensed facility in the country for production of HALEU, high-assay low-enriched uranium. It's about just shy of 20% enriched uranium. This is meant for the next generation of nuclear reactors. They're called advanced reactors or small modular reactors. Some people call them small mythical reactors because none of them are off the drawing boards, and they're going to cost enormously more than the happy news talk that we all get. There's a big push on for SMRs, small modular reactors, and Centrus is supposedly making the fuel for that next generation. They are concentrating it about 4 to 5 times more intensely than traditional current fission reactors, Davis-Besse and Perry and others. So you're talking about, of course, more compressed in a laws of physics and chemistry sort of way, high energy fuel. It is also at 20%, most nuclear weapons experts consider that you're at the threshold of entering into the usable, saleable, trafficable, illegally trafficable nuclear weapons arena globally. You're also talking about at the Centrus plant, it is established that they will be enriching at times and not exactly deliberately above a 20% level up into the 25 percentile. So it begins to get richer and richer. For comparison, today's nuclear weapons are, they contain highly enriched uranium at about a 90% enriched rate. But according to the physicists I've talked to, the energy necessary to enrich from 20% to 90% is less than it takes to get from, I think Dr. Ketterer said 0.7 to 20%. So we're talking about an increasingly desirable material to be stolen and sold. There's a lot of pride right now. There's a new plant being built, a factory in Oak Ridge called the TRISO, T-R-I-S-O facility that's going to be making so-called nuclear pebbles. There'll be pebbles, pebble-shaped, ball-shaped pebbles of nuclear fuel that will probably emanate from here, probably be made at Centrus. And the enrichment of uranium isn't going to stop there so far as things at Piketon are concerned. There's talk by the Southern Ohio Diversification Initiative that the land next to the Centrus plant would be used for another fuel fabrication facility. That means you're going to have a lot of mechanized handling and grinding and chemical processes that will be used to further combine fuel into usable form. So you're talking again about handling things that will cause emissions, water, air, expose workers, that sort of thing. Ports is slated, thanks to a new development in the Ohio General Assembly, to have its own small modular reactors in the next few years. The Ohio General Assembly is about to pass a new law to create the Ohio Nuclear Development Authority, which by all reckoning is looking like it's going to be an almost completely secret agency. While it is a governmental agency, it will be allowed to conduct most of its activity free of a lot of close scrutiny by the public or by the press. That's because it will be put in Jobs Ohio, in the Department of Development. Jobs Ohio is a nonprofit corporation that was created 10 years ago and receives Liquor Control Commission money, the taxes imposed for the sales of alcohol in Ohio. And it's what's funded the new the Intel chip factory northeast of Columbus and a number of other economic development projects. So the cheerleaders are going, and incidentally, this bill that is in the biennial budget, buried, 10 pages buried in a 5,600 page budget document, the agency will have budgetary authority and the ability to rely on the Department of Development's issuance of bonds. So we're all going to be shoveling corporate welfare money at Oklo, which is a company that is slated to build 2 molten salt reactors here at Piketon. Molten salt reactors are a technology that has some dangers, but also has already been proven a long time ago and at considerable length to not work. As a small modular reactor type, molten salt reactor, there was a molten salt reactor built at Oak Ridge in the early 1960s. It operated for about 4 years. From what I have been able to discern, it shut itself down, or had to be shut down, literally 200 to 250 times in that 4-year period. It was, of course, experimental, and that's a learning process, and I'm not criticizing that so much as the fact that the problem with molten salt reactors is salt, anybody who drives in the winter, corrodes metal. And the problem is that the intense sodium content of the material that is used to cool the reactor kept eating the reactor up. And so it had to be shut down, new parts had to be formed, all kinds of problems were occurring. So after this terrible experiment, which incidentally was a reactor room approximately the size of this conference room, the reactor also was very polluting because it was corroding pipes and a lot of radioactive liquid was escaping into the environment. And I can tell you in June 2023 that the Department of Energy has not yet, they are letting contracts for the next phase of trying to remediate the site. So another possibility, now that we will have an Ohio Nuclear Development cheerleading authority that will be shoveling money at firms that want to try experimental reactors at Piketon. Another possibility is that there could also be a reprocessing plant established at Piketon. DOE cheerleaders across the country have been talking about starting reprocessing again. Plutonium is something that is gleaned and separated out from the acid processes that are used to glean uranium fuel from spent fuel. Reprocessing is a really dirty and very dangerous type of approach to get new uranium to use for fuel. It creates a very large and mostly liquid waste stream that's very hard to control and contain. Again, a highly corrosive type of waste. If any of you are familiar with the Hanford, Washington DOE installation, which is deemed to be possibly the most dangerous nuclear waste storage site on the planet, that is something that could be reproduced in some degree here in Piketon and is a very distinct possibility. There is also a new line, a new product line at a plant facility at Piketon right now. Just in the last year and a half or so, the DOE has started to purify depleted uranium, DUF-4, it's depleted uranium. And the objective is to remove other kinds of isotopes, plutonium and uranium isotopes, that would otherwise contaminate it, because depleted uranium, as some of you probably know, is used to tip machine gun bullets, tank artillery shells, and other kinds of military weaponry, ordnance. It also is used to construct the internal structures of nuclear bombs. And it is probable that it will also be used in creating very heavy nose cones for dropped bombs. Much of the American arsenal of nuclear weapons is made up of what are called gravity bombs. That is in fact, that's the most prevalent nuclear weapon that is stored by the US at several bases in Europe. So that's going to happen here, and depleted uranium is going to be added to the contaminant mix also. So there have been a lot of efforts by some people to try to oppose this. As Pat mentioned, a number of us challenged the Department of Energy to assess publicly the nuclear weapons implications of having HALEU built here. Lee Blackburn and others have been attempting to get the Department of Energy to simply have public meetings, as they are required to under federal laws governing disclosures and citizen participation in DOE activities. But it's going to take a lot more. It's going to take people like you confronting the stuffed shirts who aren't here, and we have the empty chairs. We're talking about the senators and the representatives and now, I guess, state officials, since we're going to have a secret nuclear development authority. But it's going to require a lot of outrage and outcry over what 70 years has brought and what the future is almost certain to add to. And remember, it's adding to a problem that is not dissipating. Your worst PCB contaminations will be destroyed by sunlight and the elements after a period of about 3 to 10 years, depending on the exposure, unless they're trapped in a riverbed where they won't decompose quickly. But your worst chemicals have nothing on the peaceful and the warrior atom. So a couple of questions occur to me in the wake of all this. One of them is that this story is repeating itself. It's going to repeat itself around every DOE installation in the country, I think, at some point between now and the next few decades. But why do people always, I mean, you have this cycle of sickness or death or worker health being compromised and safety issues. And, you know, all of a sudden, it seems, or over a period of years, it finally emerges that there's a problem at Ports or another plant in Irwin, Tennessee, that there's cancer spikes, that there's a public health crisis, that people are having their lives and fortunes and possibilities all destroyed. So we're always demanding scientific verification, which we ain't getting from the federal government, that you have to get from citizen science, that you have to get from people who are spending a big chunk of their lives and time just trying to get the word out, trying to get the evidence and talk about the evidence and talk about what it should mean and whether there should be reparations and damages and stop doing this. But you're talking now about downwind vectors, 10 to 12, and who knows how many more miles downwind. It will ultimately be proven that there is measurable contamination. And DOE's response, as you saw in Dr. Ketterer's presentation, their response is, oh, that wasn't us. That was global nuclear weapons test, we think. We're not sure, but it wasn't us. I mean, that's the kind of response you're getting. And we're talking about thousands of acres of land that likely are contaminated within what DOE says is okay limits. And they've been telling a lot of their workers that you're not being poisoned, your health, your problems, I'm sorry, they don't relate to what's happening here at work. People are being systematically lied to for war or for profit or for whatever the reasons are, but they're being systematically lied to. And we are part of a natural system that is also facing those thousands of acres, as I mentioned earlier, of food producible land, of water, of soil, of trees, are also absorbing and holding and becoming storage devices for essentially human forever. And I have to wonder why it is that the companies and the governments don't have to justify up front that they aren't going to harm or destroy plants and animals and soil and water and people. And why it is that those questions only get asked after huge damage is done. One of the things that's happened in the 45 or so years that I've been actively opposing nuclear power is that a lot of science and a lot of medical science has shown that there is no safe exposure, there is no safe limit, that you're talking about ubiquitous ways that radiation gets around in the environment, from bird droppings, from rain at the wrong time when there is a cloud, a plume that's airborne, from so many causes. It's quite fascinating to realize that the same lies that I was hearing in the 70s and was being told you're nothing but a tree hugger because you're talking all this nuclear, radiation's forever and it's just the way it is. It causes me a lot of grief to think that this is going to continue unless we, in our myriad ways, in our collective ways, make it stop happening. It means, I know that Piketon means a lot of good paying jobs. I know that there are a lot of reasons to just do what's always happened here. But you can't. We can't. We need to stop making nuclear weapons, and what you are looking at is a Piketon that is pivoting into a nuclear weapons support system. This is not so much about commercial nuclear power anymore. We're talking about nuclear weapons proliferation, talking about the possibilities of trafficking, of theft, talking about a lot of environmental damage. We are at the center. We are part of the systems that we're destroying, and it has to end soon. Thank you.
Well enough. And that question was, why is Highland County not part of the 7-county study? And the reason is because it is upwind from the plant. So the prevailing winds blow from the north and the west. And so Joe chose the counties that were in that wind shed. So that's the reason for that. And now I'm going to ask Dr. Ketterer to please come up, and he has his questions. So he's just going to read them and answer them. So thank you.
Okay, well, hello again, everybody, and thanks for hanging in there. So the first question reads, your research begs the questions. One, how far in radius from the port site would you need to go to get results consistent with the null hypothesis? And I don't have the answer to that at this time. I can say that I have identified the contamination in a lot of places that are within 4, 5, 6 miles of the plant, but we have also found it in Lucasville, and that's more than 10-ish miles or so from the plants to the south. And we've also seen in DOE's own air monitoring data from Otway, which is southwest of the plant, more than 10 miles. 14. We have seen the DOE's own data shows that contamination is there. So there's some sketchy information that answers this question that's basically just saying it's pretty large. The footprint, the radius is pretty large. I can tell you one of the things that I'm interested in doing is sampling dust from people's attics, going into attics with baby wipes and wiping dust that's collected on rafters and trusses and on sheet metal and things like that, that reflects stuff that's settled out of the air in previous decades. And I think the answer is we got to go really far away, maybe all the way to Cincinnati and all the way to Pittsburgh and up to Columbus and down to the Tennessee border and work our way back towards the plant. The second part of this question is, do you ever have results that confirm contamination levels are below your detection limits of your instrumentation? Well, for uranium, pretty much we're detecting uranium in every sample. Detection limit is rarely a concern. However, we do find plenty of samples where the ratios are consistent with the null hypothesis, and therefore I conclude, well, there doesn't appear to be any Portsmouth-related contamination in this location. And I have found samples from this area that do not exhibit enriched uranium, and there's usually an explanation for that. You know, it's fill dirt that was brought in from somewhere else, or it's soil that was from 3 feet deep that the atmospheric deposition has not penetrated down to. Let's see. The next question is reading, is it true that DOE has given management immunity from the prosecution? Is it true that DOE will spend our tax dollars defending previous contractors? That is a question that might be better suited for Terry Lodge, but I just point out that the Price-Anderson Act is a piece of federal legislation that indemnifies the nuclear contractors from a lot of liability. It puts limits on their liability. I am not an attorney, and I'm not an expert in that. Terry, do you want to add any comment to that thread?
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. So the next question is, when was the largest release of radiation? 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, or 2000s? I don't have a good answer for that. I think it occurred continuously. There's bits and pieces that show this happened then and this happened then. I think during the previous decade, from about 2013 to 2016, as I mentioned, from DOE's own air monitoring data, there were massive emissions into the air of Tech 99 and so forth. And was it more from enrichment process or the massive storage from around the country? I'm not sure what the massive storage is around the country, but I think a lot of it is just gases leaking out from the cascade. And it could also be, stored cylinders of depleted uranium hexafluoride are also leaking out into the air. The final question is, where should we move that is safe? Well, that's another interesting question, and I think the answer to that is there are probably some type of environmental hazards anywhere you go to on this planet. And I think the person who wants to do appropriate due diligence should, kind of investigate and understand their own environment that they live in. That's the best that I can say. Here's another question. How do your tests and samples compared with DOE samples? Does DOEs have tests for this area? I think that one ought to ask DOE that the community ought to be demanding more from them, because I'm the guy that lives in Arizona. I am not the perpetrator of this problem. DOE, you are the people that are responsible. You ought to answer the question. But how do my wipe samples compare? Well, we managed to find enriched uranium in Savannah River National Laboratory's wipe samples from Zahn's Corner School, and also found enriched uranium using the wipe samples that Ms. Lamerson collected with baby wipes. So that to me is about as comparable as you can get. So there's one more question here for me. Who is to blame for the X-326 fire? I do not have any specific knowledge of what that's referring to. So that's it for the formal questions that I have. Terry, did you want to say something here? Or you have a pad of questions? All right.
So the question was, essentially, does the Department of Energy, does the federal government defend and cover the costs and even the damages that might be awarded against their federal contractors? Yep. It's the unfortunate position you very frequently run into when you take on bad governmental decisions, and that is that you are paying taxes for your own opponents. And yes, the federal government, the Department of Justice, does quite a job and sends down platoons of lawyers to run all over those of us who practice guerrilla law. And we sort of fire our muskets and disappear into the forest and wait for the helicopters, I think, is kind of the way I think of it sometimes. So the question here, I've got 4 or 5 here. Boy, I didn't know this was going to be on the exam, but if natural background uranium levels exist everywhere, and those levels higher near natural uranium deposits. I'm not a geologist, but from what I understand, yeah, typically that's so. What about radioactive emissions from both mining and fossil fuel combustion? There is a great deal of radium that is released in all forms of mining. Also, fracking, hydraulic fracturing, because of the pressurized liquid approach to extract natural gas and oil from the ground, brings up enormous quantities of radium. Radium is kind of it's interesting, it's dangerous, it doesn't have the same scare effect as plutonium does. Plutonium we sort of associate with the bomb. Radium is more water soluble than plutonium and tends to identify tissues, bone tissues, calcium bearing tissues as places where it should chemically nest. And about 120 years or so ago, there were scientists in Europe that discovered an isolated radium and developed the first primitive X-ray machines. And all of them ultimately died of horrible cancers because of very poor shielding and not a clear understanding of the dangers of radioactive exposure. But yes, coal burning also is another form of radium contamination, as well as a few other isotopes. Okay, is there a safe and reliable way to transport, neutralize, or store radioactive waste? My first answer is stop making more of it. My second answer is pay the true cost of safety to take care of what we have to deal with without making more. If you stop making more of it, that begins to be a solution. If you are willing to pay, if utility companies, if governmental entities, if everybody that is making this dangerous material were required to do the right thing, which is not exactly true. There are storage canisters, there are transport canisters to move spent fuel and other radioactive waste around, but they are not ultra safe. There are problems with weight because you're talking about usually having to use lead or some type of lead alloy in order to properly shield it. There are problems with the fact that a spent fuel train car can go past you and you can be exposed standing there. You can be exposed waiting at the rail crossing. You can be exposed in a lot of ways. There are tons of problems with radioactive waste transport, and neither the Nuclear Regulatory Commission nor the Department of Energy is very interested in requiring the clients. They view the industries that they regulate supposedly as customers. And they usually are not too interested in dropping the hammer and making the true expense be realized. Because if the true cost of a lot of these extreme energies, and I'm talking about fracking and I'm talking about nuclear, if we really had quantified upfront the scientific dangers, the public health dangers, the environment is going to be poisoned permanently, then you'd start going cha-ching, cha-ching, this doesn't work. Let's do something better, safer, less stressful, and less inclined toward theft and war or casual underestimation of the dangers. But let's talk about what it really costs, what the real dollars and cents are about, because we don't do that. And the politicians certainly don't want to bring bad news to people. Sorry to lecture, but the final question, and this one is one that I invite everybody's thinking and input and suggestions. How do you suggest we go up against the behemoth industry, government, political force that will not support or promote sustainable industry for our area? As residents, we often feel hopeless. Well, it's more than buttonholing the empty chair airbags that aren't here today. But that's one way to start. It also is about possibly considering passing local laws, not feel-good resolutions, but local laws at the county level or at the city level. Amend your charter and forbid radioactive industry and transport in your community. Sure, they can go around Piketon, or they can go around they can find ways to belittle what you're doing, but you're talking about making a statement that citizens are done. We're passing laws through the initiative process. We're saying no. And, we'll take our chances with the courts and with other people being annoyed that we're possibly threatening the employment prospects of this area. There's a phenomenon that I'm worried about for Piketon is that I think the DOE's perception is you're already a national sacrifice zone. So why don't we just pile on? Let's expand into reprocessing, fuel construction. Let's do more dirty nuclear stuff. Because what the hell? Those 6 or 7 or 10 counties, sorry, yeah, you got a high death rate, but think of what you're doing for the country. Any other questions? And incidentally, I have a list of possible ideas in my head, including passing county charters. It would be very interesting to see what the Piketon electorate might think as this information that's been brought out today becomes more widely known. But it's time to say we are the law. We're going to legislate. We're going to be in charge. Thanks.
Okay, speakers, thank you for those questions. Okay. So there's a question from the live stream, and it says, is there already an umbrella organization among anti-nuclear groups? that we could deal with. And there are there are at least 3 major groups, but there's the Nuclear Information and Resource Service in Washington, D.C., and you can look them up online. NIRS.org. Then there is Beyond Nuclear, and Kevin Camps, will you stand up? He's the nuclear waste watchdog from Beyond Nuclear that's located in Washington, D.C. So thank you for being here, Kevin. And then there's the Nuclear Energy Information Service in Chicago, and Jan Budar is here from that group. So there she is in the back. Stand up, please, Jan. And thank you for being here. And then I think the Ohio Nuclear Free Network, onfn.org, has our website is just up. I believe there's a way that you can contact us through there if you'd like to contact us with more questions. And you can always contact, I think we'll put up Terry's, has an email, Dr. Ketterer and Joe Mangano as well. We'll put up ways for people to contact them if you have more questions. So we have, I think I had a list of people that were the people that want to speak. Please come towards the front. We have a number of people that wish to. I'll call first Chick Lawson. Would you like to go first? Okay. So we're asking people that would like to speak about health issues that they have their concerns about to please come forward at this time. Thank you.
I don't know how well this shows up. That is a wildflower that was plucked up by a stream by Mr. Walter Duncan outside of the plant. And as you can see what he did, he laid that on an X-ray plate and it developed perfectly. And you can see the bottom of the roots look like a light bulb. That's where it's drawing up the radiation. And you can actually see the radiation going through the veins of the flower all the way up into the petals. That's what you are eating, folks. That's what the deer that you hunt are eating. That's what the rabbits, the squirrels, the birds, the fish are consuming this. And then we are consuming it. And that brings back to one thing I want to state real quick is I was warned that I should shut up about this from people that's working at the plant. They're afraid I'm trying to stop their jobs, and I'm not. I want the place cleaned up, but I want it done safely with tenting, like they had to do at Hanford, like they have to do at Oak Ridge. Just because we're Appalachians don't mean we're less people. We've got some very brilliant people from this area. One of them he runs the Star Wars program, graduated from Valley High School. But that's basically all I'm going to say about them. One other thing. Now, there was a study done out in Berkeley when all this plutonium stuff started out. And if you look that study up, you will find that it takes 1/1,000,000th of a gram of plutonium to cause fatal cancer. But there's a latency period. Young children, you're looking 4 to 10 years before the cancer will show. On an adult, you're looking 10 to 15 years before the cancer shows. This is an example of one of the pathways coming in. Now, what I want to show you now on the slides, I was asked to testify to Ohio EPA hearing. It was a sworn testimony. I submitted documents that shows that they have done criminal acts. Now, some of my slides actually overlap Dr. Ketterer's slides, and I apologize for that. But you're going to see some of the routes of how some of this material came into the area, which the people here need to know that. You go ahead and show the first one. Yeah, you can turn the lights down now. No, turn it down or.
Might need to walk this down a little bit.
Okay, this is from the, this is a letter I had to send to Ohio EPA, Max Moore in Columbus. What that is, when I testified, I spoke about some documents, other documents that I had, the ones that I had not brought. And so they wanted to know if I would send them, which I did, and I sent them the full reports. Some of these reports can be anywhere from 300 to 500 pages long and very thick. So I didn't copy 300 to 500 pages for Saul to read. So what I basically did was put like the front of the cover and a little bit of the meat on a page where it's at, where you can find it. So let's go to the next one. Be the this is the document which he's already showed. This is my house. Okay. Now people say, well, how bad is it in your house? The levels of my house would be equal to what's used in a light water reactor. They have found Neptunium-237. They have found traces of plutonium. They have found enriched uranium, U-234, U-235, 36, and 38 in my house. How's this affected me? It's affected me horribly. I've had 2 cancers, which I did work at the plant. And just so everybody knows, Jeremy Davis, bless his heart, DOE, he at a meeting over at the Northwest School, when I did a radio show at WNXT, it got the people fired up over there. Basically, they referred and told them that I was just a guard, but I actually was a safety officer, been through process school. I've been through Bicon school. It's one of the top radiation schools in the country. I've been through 12 to 14 other radiation classes that I had to study and pass. I was a safety officer, and I was also the OSHA investigator for the plant, licensed investigator. So I have an extensive background in radiation, studying radiation, things of that nature. My house right now, I have a son who has a tumor in the center of his brain. My daughter has a tumor that wraps completely around her spine and her nervous system. My wife now has thyroid issues, severe thyroid issues. 3 of my dogs have died from unusual cancers: breast cancer, rectal cancer, and bone cancer. The thyroid, that is indicative of the technetium-99. The bone cancer, that could be from, that is most likely from the plutonium, because plutonium is a bone seeker on these issues. So that's how it's affecting me. And now, just so you'll know, since they tested my house is now worth nothing. 0. I cannot sell my house. I was actually planning to sell it. Now I can't. Let's go to the second one. Okay, this is an investigation, independent investigation done in 2000 that they requested. Go to the next page. Okay, go on up. Or, I mean, down, I'm sorry, down. Steve, what happened here? Okay, there it is. Okay, right there. This is the problems. There's 17 problems listed here. Everything from management to radiation problems, how they're doing their business, and it's not good. Matter of fact, when they got the licensure for United States Enrichment Corporation, I think it was close to what, 300 million that they spent trying to be able to get up to the bar where they could run it, and they couldn't pass it. That it finally had to be given to them because their work was so bad. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, this is volume 1. Somehow these got mixed up. And I think when we go to page, I think it's 80. Oh, I think you got did you give him yours? No. Did you get the one out of the, something's not working right on it.
This here?
No, page 83 of that report, and it's the venting Okay, on page 83 of that report, I don't know what happened to this. Somehow that's got the wrong one in it. But it's the right report. What it is, they had what they term, DOE uses a lot of code words because they don't want the workers in the community to understand what it is they're really doing. One of those code words is midnight rockets. Now, we're not talking about 4th of July. What they did is they have a trap system throughout the process buildings. So what they did, on midnight shift, they would take and they say, we need to release midnight rocket. So what they would do a bleed down. And then after they did the bleed down, they would open all the valves up. And what they done was extend the piping so it would go up into the upper atmosphere. And they put in what's called a jet air express system. And it sounds, I was in the Air Force, it sounds a lot like a T-39 jet when you start it up. That's that loud. So they were blowing this material up to the upper atmosphere, and it's going 4 directions, not just primary east to west type direction that we normally see in the area. But that is called midnight rockets. Let's go to the next one and see what it does. Okay, this here, draft. This is Burns and Road report. This is another independent investigation on the plant. They're trying to get ready for privatization. Go to the next one. No, you're going backwards for some reason. Right here. Well, these are out of order for some reason. I don't know why. This is the 95 Lawrence Livermore study. And if you can move that down a little bit, it shows right there. This is what Dr. Ketterer was talking about. I was the ocean investigator. So Lawrence Livermore, when I watched them take the samples, I asked them, I said, can you send me the results? So they sent me the raw data points that they collected. And as you can see, all the transuranics are in there. And there's one thing different about this report than DOE's report. You see polonium on this? Yes. When you read DOE's report, you don't see polonium. Why? Because it came from Russian feed. They didn't want people to know we were running their material. And you can see DOE, the reason I'm showing is DOE is still telling people, oh, it's allowable levels. There's really no plutonium out here. Okay, go on, please. Next one. This one here going up a little bit. The reason I'm showing this, where you see that stamp on the bottom, I took this to the Scioto County Commissioners to show them the transuranics that are in our area that they produce, that they release to the atmosphere and water, and it's getting into soil. When we tried to present this, they threw us out of the meeting. They basically said if we didn't leave, we were going to be escorted out by the sheriff's department. So we sat outside. So I would not give them it because they would not allow us to present it to them in the meeting. So that's got their stamp on it. They didn't get it because they threw us out. Okay, next one. Okay, this is a letter to William Richardson. And you can see it's got Mike DeWine's name on the bottom and George Voinovich. They say there was no plutonium, that the plutonium's not there. See what they're discussing? It says 1985, the undiluted plutonium that was brought to the Portsmouth for handling. We were processing pure plutonium. They never told anybody. Now, why wouldn't they tell us? Because that changes all of our safety parameters. You had to have special equipment. You had to have special handling. You had to have special testing. Plus, we weren't set up to run that in the process system. The process system was set up just to enrich uranium. So like Michael said earlier, when this stuff gets in there, it causes all kinds of problems. That's why I put that on there. Mike DeWine knew it. Now, what's interesting about that, they had a meeting here in 99. This was in, I think, August. And then the 99 meeting, it was in September, if I remember correctly. So he knew about it then, but this never was brought out in the 99 meeting that they knew this plutonium had been shipped in. So go to the next one. Okay, that's document 3. Go on down, go to the next one. I don't know what's happening here. The heater report. That heater report, that was done by John Cardarelli and Stephen Aaron-Holtz. They are NIOSH officials down in Cincinnati. They use them a lot. I had requested for them to come in. I'm not a nuclear physicist. I don't pretend to be. So what they did was assist me doing investigations, basically, excuse me, on neutrons and the problems we were having. We come to discover that all the time that plant ran, they never counted the neutron exposure. They only counted alpha, beta, and gamma. So when they did that, that changes the parameters. And I'll give you an example. They reported our badges at like 0.027, 0.028 millirem. When in reality, when I went through Bicron school, we used the actual read sheets. We were finding, and we tested the badges, our dosimeter badges that measure the radiation every quarter. So basically what was happening was we were getting between 2.8 to 3.5 rem a quarter. Now the problem with that, by law, under OSHA standards and DOE standards and NRC standards, you're not allowed to receive over 5 rem in a calendar year. Once that happens, they would have to send you home for 1 calendar year, but you got paid your full wages. That wasn't going to happen. So nobody ever went over 5 rem. The documents, I filed a OSHA complaint. We had an OSHA hearing. Lockheed Martin then took all of the records and threw them through a wood chipper. All 40 years worth of radiation records were totally destroyed. The reason they destroyed them, because they knew they were going to be sued because of the exposures. My body burden, myself, right now, and Dr. David Menuda helped figure this out. He's the one that did it for me. With my exposures, I was getting between 6.8 to right at 12 rem a year. So I worked there for 15 years, and after I turned them in for all the falsification, they had me medically retired because I got hurt out there. But when I left after 15 years, my body burden, alpha, beta, gamma, and neutron, 240 rem. 50 rem is your maximum lifetime. 300 rem, you start dying. So it's sort of strange. If I have to have an MRI because I've had 2 cancers and things like that, I say, what's my dose? Oh, don't worry about it. It's minimal. I said, no, I really need to know what my dose is, whether or not I decide or not to have this test. But I have to watch those things. So they also, in this, again, Washington, D.C., see where it says bad practice? That was put in by, I think her name, Donna Shalea, that she was over to CDC at the time. She says, do not use the word criminal or illegal. They made them remove it from the report and write bad practice. He told me that himself, personally. So again, it's a code word. Slow cooker is a code word. That means subcritical reaction. In other words, it's not high enough to flash blue where everybody falls over dead. Now, how does that affect us as workers? Because in the vaults that we guarded, the weapons grade, the 97% assay for nuclear warheads, we were having a subcritical reaction. And we did not know that. They withheld that information from us. But what they did do was take what they called a background badge. So that background badge was reading the levels of radiation in that vault. Now, my badge is coming up almost the same as what the background badge is, but it's not really background. That's an actual read. But what they would do when they would read the badge, they would subtract their background badge from our dose. And that way, your dose was always low. So that's why I put that in there. Go to the next one. Yes.
We have some other people that may have to leave. So if we could put you on hold and have you come back so we could make sure that everybody has a chance to come up and talk before they have to leave. because I know it's been a long day and we appreciate people being here and staying. So I want to see, yes, and thank you. Chick will be back. We'll ask him to come and finish his remarks, but we didn't want to exclude anybody that might have to leave. So we'll see if people are still here. Is Dave Simpson still here?
Yes.
Would you like to come forward and speak for 5 minutes or so about your problems? And thank you very much for being here.
Hello, I'm David Simpson. I worked at the plant for just under 39 years. 30 years as an instrument tech, and in the last 8 years, I was a decommissioning technician, worked with radioactive waste. We were repackaging it. What I have here are just some things. If you come up with a radiation cancer, the workers have a program where they can get compensated for it. If you come up with chemical exposure, you have to really jump through a lot of hoops and stuff to get compensated for it. There's a lot of, it's very difficult to get through. And I just want to show some of the things that I saw out there and what makes it kind of hard for that. There was one of the things there was a special setup procedure for radiation clusters in the last building I worked out of called 744G due to the high background. This kind of goes along with what Chick was talking about. A radiation cluster is what we use to check for those slow cookers. There was 3 radiation detectors sitting there, and if 2 of them would start cooking up high, it would give an alarm and evacuate the building and stuff. You normally would go through a logic checkout in all the buildings and set these things up right in place. But that building had enough background radiation. They had a special procedure set up. We had to do it on the truck outside the building before you could ever take it in. They didn't tell us why. They just told us that's why we had to do it. And they made a special procedure just for that one building because of the background. Inside that building, we had some a whole bunch of lots of different types of materials. Some of them are our buildings, some of them from other buildings. One of the lots in there had drums in and stuff, and it was marked fuel rods. So there was at least some fuel rods in there. There was another container that had, there was a whole 20 or 30 barrels in there. They had Arabic marking on them. I don't know exactly what was in it, but it was foreign markings on them. I did safety activities out there for the majority of the time I was out there, not because I thought I was that safe. It just I couldn't keep my mouth shut and tried to fix things as go along. And I'm not mad at the company or anything. I just tried to get things better. I had an individual come up when he was working on a operator's blister manifold. He had green goo come out of it. And I wrote we found out it was arsenic. And I'm the one that wrote the health hazard NIOSH health hazard evaluation for arsenic, and they investigated it. We were told that it was a contaminant in the fluorine, but there was a classified reason it was deliberately put in the system. So, that was one of the things we found out. I was involved in a mercury spill in warehouse 15. We spilled about 1,300 pounds of mercury over there and had it all over the place. I was told by one of the laboratory people, if you had to break a thermometer, you evacuate a room. If you spill a teaspoon of it, you would evacuate a building. This should have evacuated the whole plant site, but we didn't do it. We just kept messing with it. In the 720 line recorder room, line recorders is kind of a mass spectrometer, but they were set up for certain chemicals. In fact, I did part of this. We were told to use steam piping, and we steam cleaned the internal piping on it when they come back contaminated. They would have mercury on it. It would have all these transuranics and so forth. That would be on the northwest corner of 720. And that was one of the first Superfund sites we had where we did the steam cleaning of the machines there. In the instrument shop cleaning room, which was probably about half the size of this here, one side of the cleaning room along the wall, we did acid cleaning of the instruments as they come back in. They had various acids. It'd be sulfuric, hydrochloric, or nitric, or a mixture of all 3 of them. And we call that aqua regia. On the other side of the room, we did silver plating. To do silver plating, you would do copper cyanide solution, then you would use nickel cyanide solution, then you would do a silver cyanide solution. They were in uncovered cleaning chemical tanks on one side, and the acids are on the other side of the room. Nothing marked, nothing labeled, and I was never trained the whole time I was in there on how to mix these acids or use it or anything. We had an emergency response kit just outside the room there that had emergency cyanide syringes. When I got sick and they called, while I was off work, they called the plant doctor in, and he like had a panic attack when he saw the cyanide test kits in there, emergency response kits, and didn't know about them. Fresh air, but plant air. For years, we used a plant air was our supplied air for breathing. When we started hooking up to it, we've had lubricating oil come out of it. We've had bugs. We've had all kinds of stuff. They never changed the plant filters until we started complaining and everything. So the people were breathing whatever was inside the plant air system. When I first got there, we had BioPack respirators. A BioPack has a small oxygen bottle in it with a chemical cartridge that you scrubbed out. It was good for about an hour. I had the person there that worked in that place and refurbished them, said if they only had 5, 10, 15 minutes used on them, they would just reset them, wipe them down, send them right back out with a used cartridge in it, instead of putting a new chemical cartridge in each time. From the 80s up to about 2000, our full face mask with a organic chemical cartridge is one big cartridge on it. Those should have been taken off and thrown away after every use. A chemical cartridge is good for so many parts per million for so many minutes. We didn't document how long you wore them or anything. When those came back for years, all they did was just flow check them. As long as they flowed, they continued to put them out. The security guards, if they were in a release, they were forced to sit there in it for the whole time of the release. They were not allowed to leave. When we finally started doing away with those chemical cartridges is when the people started complaining they could taste metal and stuff when they were using them. And so now they go through there and they put new cartridges on. We got smaller cartridges because they're cheaper, and they throw the cartridges away after every use. We wouldn't do that at that time. In the 720 compressor shop, we had a mechanic. They were used to use trichlor 111. If they had a plugged up line in there, they would pour it down in the line, then heat it up with a torch, and that would blow, we call PG, but the uranium plug, it would heat it up and it start bubbling and blow it across the room in. And that's how they cleaned it out. It was made it easier than trying to cross drill it and drill it out and everything. Well, we were in the process at that time, starting to do the ISMS, the safety systems there, where you change into more safer chemicals instead of trichlor. And they used a citrus-based chemical that day. He was all taped up, paper coveralls and everything, no safety watch, nobody watching him when he would drop his arm. He caught fire, but that's what he intended to do that day, was take the torch and blow it across the room. In our 720 machine shop, the break room was right next to the machine shop, and they kept telling us forever we didn't have any beryllium there. But when they tipped the compressor blades on the lathe, that was right next to the break room. So everybody in 720 was getting exposed to beryllium every time they did a machine work on the aluminum blades in the compressors. An incident happened in 720 instrument shop aisle. We were trying to get rid of all the hazardous chemicals out of the hazardous locker storage in stores. And they had a quantity of pure cyanide there. And they asked for it and they delivered it. Stores delivered it on about quitting time on a Thursday or Friday night. It's in a paper bag about that big around, and they set it on the floor right where people was riding bicycles and stuff through there. And that was enough cyanide to kill everybody all the way down to Piketon. Just sitting on paper ground on the floor there. And if we had rain, a downpour rain, the floors had backed up and it could have flooded that and pushed it all around too. At the steam plant, when I first hired in, we used opacity monitors to monitor the smoke going out for the coal-fired plant there. The first opacity monitor I saw when I first got there in the early 80s had a hole drilled in the front of it. That's where the calibration screw was. So the operators could take a screwdriver and misadjust the calibration on the opacity monitor anytime they didn't want it to work, because that opacity monitor was hooked up to a chart recorder that went to EPA. And if they got too high opacity on there, they got fined. They were allowed 20 minutes, I think, to start up a piece of machinery to put out too much smoke, and then they had to clean it up. But that one had a hole drilled in it so they could play with it. And in the Cascade, I was on a lot of the safety committees out there. One of them was the Contamination Control Committee. I was the co-chair of it for about 10, 12 years. And being an instrument tech, we went out and I did a daily check every day of the Ludlam 12 radiation meters. And I could kind of keep an eye on the birth hold hand and foot monitors and the PCM2 half body monitors. And if the way they set up, they could subtract background when you got on them, and then you could get an additional reading. Well, if you, at 29 seconds, they would time out and then they'd have to be cleaned or they didn't work. A clean machine would be around 12 seconds. I could check those machines every day, and you could see the buildup of dust and dirt on the floor because the company quit sweeping the floor. And this radon and so forth would be building up on the floor, and the machines would get dirty, and we had trouble keeping the machines clean and operational just because of the dust buildup. In the Contamination Control Committee, every time I was in there, I was asking for sweeping to be done to get rid of it or ventilate the buildings or whatever, and they wouldn't do either one. My fallback position was trying to just get a clean 100-foot circle around the machines. And I got that sometimes, and sometimes I didn't. But that was just, these are some of the issues that people had to face working there every day. We didn't go out there to commit suicide. We didn't go out there to try to hurt anybody. We were just trying to do our job and proud to do it. And, I really enjoyed the work out there most of the time. I really miss the people, but there's lots of things we should have done a lot better. That's about all I have. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much to Dave Simpson. And do we have Gina Doyle still here?
Yes.
Oh, please come forward. Thank you.
I don't really have a lot of questions. I kind of inherited a group called Don't Dump on Us from my sister because she started it. Her health has since kind of deteriorated, her and her husband. So she asked me to take it over. Well, she kind of pointed me. So 4 years ago, when we started this, I had a post on our site, and I asked people who could tell me who in their family had cancer, what proximity to the plant they lived, how many, whatever. I was sitting on my computer that night and I started watching, and I could see the tears started rolling down my face because people just kept typing and kept typing. And the stories they were telling me was just heartbreaking. So that got me involved in this because I couldn't turn my head, So I talked to Matt Brewster, and he said he wanted the list because Brad Winstrup was at the health department, had a meeting down there, and he wanted that list from me. So I typed it all up, take it down to Matt, and he takes it to, or gives it to, I suppose, Mr. Winstrup. Never heard a word back about it. Since then, that was 4 years ago, there was hundreds of names on this list, families that we all know. Since then, you can imagine how many more have died. I know several that have died since then. My cousin lost half her lung to cancer. During the time that she was fighting cancer, her husband starts having symptoms, and he just had his bladder and prostate removed. It just goes on and on. I feel like that the DOE feels like they put the plant there because We are Appalachia people. We are what they thought were dumb, that they could put this plan in there and just do what they wanted. And now they're wiping us out slowly but surely. We can't grow. I wanted to plant a garden for the last few years, but I'm scared to death. I don't want to grow anything. My grandkids, I watch every day. I have 13 of them from here to Georgia. I wouldn't feed them a thing out of the ground in my backyard now. My sister and her husband live right next door to the plant. They live on Dutch Run. She's the one that started this. They told her years ago, don't drink the water. Don't let your kids play in the creek. You know, it goes on and on. I know I'm tired of it. I'm scared to death for my grandkids. So I know that everybody else that lives around here who's paying attention is scared too. And that's really all I have to say. I don't have any questions because my questions were all answered. It's scary. It's devastating. It's what it's doing, what you've told us our future is. It's not good. I don't think we have a future here. I think that they want to just keep on adding on until there is nothing left. They'll have to either buy people out or watch them up and leave. And this will be nothing. Nothing for our grandkids, nothing for their grandkids. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you to Gina Doyle. And yes, we need to tell the Department of Energy that we need clean jobs. We need safe jobs. There's plenty of solar and wind are ready to go right now. Where are they? You know, where are the cities with the solar on the roofs and so forth? There's a rooftop unless you have a tree, there's room for a rooftop, especially in the city. So rooftop solar is what we want. Okay. Is Brenda Powell still here? Okay. Sheila Hammond? Jordan Hammond? I think they were together and they left. Okay. So I think we can, is there anyone else here besides, well, we know that that Jeff Walburn and Chick Lawson are still going to speak. They can speak as long as they want to. Is there anybody else that would want to speak first?
I just have 30 seconds.
Come forward, Lori Swain, please.
Hi, we live in Portsmouth. SODI, Southern Ohio Diversification Initiative, was put together at the time that the gaseous diffusion plant shut down. And their mission, they were charged with diversifying the industry in our area. They have never diversified. Diversify means something different. And there are lots and lots of different possibilities. But the only thing SODI ever comes up with, and they're in lockstep with the DOE and the nuclear industry, the only thing they keep coming up with is the same old thing.
Okay, I'll invite Chicks. Oh, Vina. Okay, come forward. Vina Colley.
For those of you who don't know, PRESS, Portsmouth Piketon Residents for Environmental Safety and Security, and National Nuclear Workers for Justice was formed from PRESS. We've been working on this site a decade. I started in 1983 when I wrote my first grievance to the company, telling them that these workers were being exposed to radiation. This went to the Department of Labor. On our jobs, I was an electrician, and on our jobs, we were taking trichloroethylene, cleaning down uranium-contaminated cells without our knowledge. When we got done with this trichloroethylene, we dumped it in the sewer. So when I got sick and they started kind of like harassing me, I told them that they were dumping this down the drains. So they eventually finally dropped dropped it and told us not to be using the trichloroethylene anymore. Press, Velma Shears, and I worked on this cancer study in 1955 until the 80s, and a heart chart. And if you look, you can see after the plant started production, it started raising up here. And one reason it didn't show cancer for Pike County or the surrounding counties, because when you got cancer, you weren't added to this county because you went 100 miles to Columbus, to Cincinnati, and that's where your cancer got counted. So we lobbied for them to give us the zip codes or the area codes that we were living in. And so once they done that, it kicked it back. No matter where you went, it kicked you back to this county. And when they did that, the cancer rate started rocketing. Press started, I think, probably in 1987 when there was a lawsuit filed. That lawsuit took 21 years to solve. And so Press has been at this. We've taken soil samples, water samples. We had documents that no one else could even find. We've been in basements. We've been in workers, the union hall. I was going to the union hall. They were allowing me to make documents for nothing for the community. And then finally some of the workers would say, well, she's working more for the community than she is for the workers. So I eventually got kicked out of the union hall to make free copies. In 1999, Press has broken a lot of stories here at the plant. And the one that we broke in 1999 with Mary Bird Davis was we had plutonium at Piketon. So when it came down, Piketon, they admitted that they had one cylinder fed into this plant. And that's how we got to plutonium. That's not true. We've been recycling what I call reactor fuel since 1955. And the transuranic started showing up since 1955. So we confront them and they've admitted it. DeWine and them was at all these hearings. I've been in all their offices. I've even been in Senator Glenn's office, and I took a stack of papers this high and I said, here, take these. This is Pike County, and this will tell you where all the contamination is and what's going on in our county. The guy in Glenn's office said, take them with you. I said, no. Now you know what I know, and you're just as guilty as the DOE if you don't do something about it. And they did nothing about it. They don't care. I think we're going to have to go after these contractors out here, like the workers did, in order to get them to pay attention to this community. I joined probably 45 national nuclear groups trying to get the Piketon on the map. Piketon wasn't even on the map. We were a Superfund site. We doubled the Superfund site, but never was put on it because Celeste signed a consent agreement. And so they hurried up in here and they're trying to clean this plant up and not telling anybody. It is one of the worst facilities in the world, one of the largest facilities in the world. And it has 2 buildings in here that are larger than any buildings of all these other sites. So I want to say I have some people I want to appreciate their hard work, Jeff and Chick, Dwayne Pullman, Dr. Ketterer. Steve's done a lot of videoing, and I'll probably miss some of you. Terry Lodge, I'm working with him with the high assay low enriched uranium. They want to do the same thing they did when they were in the GSIP project, except now it's going to go into a new building, and it's called the centrifuge. And they want, from my understanding, because I talked to all these groups, they want to clean all these other sites up. And I think they want to send their plutonium and the transuranics here again for us to recycle. That's my opinion on it. It was my opinion that we've been recycling since 1955, and that opinion, everyone can see what happened. But there's a lot of stories I could tell, but I know a lot of people want to talk. But we've been here a long time. We're not going to go away. Gina and them, they all worked in our group for a long time too. But we had 4 or 5 board members that died of cancer. We had members who've been harassed threatened to take away their Social Security, take away this or that, if you got involved with the community groups. And as long as they don't admit that they have a problem, even though it's in their document, you've not heard any of them. Matter of fact, one of them was on Dwayne Pullman's video saying, it was White, Mr. White. He didn't know anything about plutonium being here. And they do, because the X705 had an experimental project going on that contaminated those workers so bad that they had to be taken and shipped down to Oak Ridge, try to get their contamination down. I have those guys' names and I have their readings. And then people come to me and talk to me about their cancer, and my daughter said, Mom, everything you're doing is depressing. But I said, I can't stop. If you saw these little kids that are sick and dying, you can't stop. We can't let them get by with it. And these jerks need to be voted out.
All right, thank you so much, Vina. Okay, so Chick, if you're ready to come and, you want to finish first, or we'll bring Jeff Walburn up. So, thank you very much, Jeff.
All right, can everybody hear me? Can you hear me good? Is it okay? I'm not hearing you, Williams. Okay, let's all do a seventh inning stretch here. You've been here a long time. Let's all stand up and stretch. That's a good idea. And if the elected officials are home on their couch, they can stand up and do a seventh inning stretch too. I don't know what they're doing. They're probably, they're not here. But if you look at this is Anne Marie White. The government the Senate had the good sense to hire this woman. Her dad was a professional hockey player. She's a tough lady. I'm getting a little bit of ring back. She's a tough lady. She was brought into DOE to be the Environmental One manager, and she was Senate confirmed. She had her own business. She had worked internationally. She had the credentials down in the weeds to do the job. She was the one. So this picture here, that's right before the 29th of May, or April, excuse me. They fired her shortly after the Zons Corner School. And so I called her on the phone. And she's a demure lady, tough. Her dad was a hockey player. And the first thing out of her mouth said, you know, they fired my ass, Jeff. Now let that sink in. They put out in the paper that she stepped down. She didn't step down. They run her out because she was too honest. And I said, do you know why they fired you? And she said, yeah, they manipulated some ACERs, the ACER reports, and I found the numbers and changed them back. And I think that's why they fired me. And I said, did you know who fired you? I said, my opinion, Paul DeBar was the science head at that time. He was a former submariner, Undersecretary of Energy, but he was an investment banker for JP Morgan prior to coming to Dove. So the revolving door of the banks that's who fired her, because Hallew was on the line. That's my opinion. Now you got JP Morgan, you got Daniel Poneman, Centrus, and you got Bill Gates. The Hallew program, I said, that's why you were put out the door, whether you want to believe that or not. But at the 27th meeting, they talked about Zons Corner. And I hope all of you has got to see those documents that Chick had. 20, these ACERs ran 2 years, 2017 and 18 reported in 2019. The numbers on 2017 for Zahn's Corner were bad, and that's what closed the school. They came in on Memorial Day. Got off of their duffs, come in on Memorial Day, jumped in there and said, oh, we got the samples, your stuff's no good, we know. So what they didn't tell, you had Jeremy Davis, his name's come up here a couple times. It was cesium out of a fire alarm. It was J.D. Dow. It was fallout. But they had hidden the ACERs on Camp Creek in 2018, and every number across the board was worse than Zahn's Corner, and they hid that number, told a lie to the general public. That's not malicious, my friends. That is criminal. That is criminal. And they told this lie. They followed Chick. He's telling they went to a school board meeting and talked about cosmic radiation from an airplane, how you get more cosmic radiation. Said Jeremy, we're not talking about cosmic, we're talking about uptake. Alpha emitters getting inside your body and destroying it from the inside. But the unique thing was they had a Scioto County commissioner following him around like a blind dog in a meat house. And that's my opinion. But Brian Davis, no, they're not related, but they're a lot alike. Now, the man run around, people here don't know, when you see Chick, they run him out of the plant. We picked up automatic weapons every day. And we'd sling them on our back, and they would see Chick come in, and they'd say, that man's going to have you wearing a barrel. He's going to run you out of here. We're not going to have a job. He was the OSHA investigator, and he's putting the magazine in an automatic weapon, and he'd just smile and sling it and go on. But they had Chick down to, they shoved him out of the plant. It was perfect. He got a hernia in his lumbar, and it put him out of a job. Other people were brought back, but not Chick. They had him down to $3.74 at one point. He could not pay his bills and had his church not come in and saved him. $3.74. Now, that's getting pretty damn close to home. So I'm Chick's nurse. I used to work at the plant. They threatened to bomb Chick's family and car. They threatened me to take me out of the plant by any means necessary. I testified in the United States Senate. I testified in front of Health and Human Services. I testified right in this building 24 years ago, and I called DOE criminal. And they are still criminal. They are criminal. These people, I don't know where they get their money. I don't know how they get their money, but they are not doing their job. They should be kicked out of their job. Or I was thinking of East Palestine, Ohio. And I thought, damn, if N&W had been in the nuclear business, they could have walked. They come down on Norfolk and Southern like a load of bricks. And I'm here to tell you, they all rolled out. They haven't had one fatality. We got 11 dead kids at one school. AML leukemia. There's people sick all over the community. You can't eat your produce. Where are they? Where are they? I'll put the spurs on. I'll rep you. I'll ride that bronc. No, I'm a hillbilly. I'm just like you. You ain't like me. Because if I tell you something, or I put my hand out and shake your hand, I mean it. And if I say I'll go to the wall for you, like Chick Lawson, I called him from my bed 30 years ago, and we've been on an investigation that has not stopped for 30 years. And I'm here to tell you, that man right there if he tells you something, he is your friend, not like these people. They want to be somebody. That's how you be somebody. You stand by your family, your friends, your community. So go ahead and switch to the next one. I talked a long time on that one, but can you? All right, next one. Okay, Carl Hartley's sitting here. Carl come to me and they said, well, they're putting Hallow in. He said, did they know about that burial site underneath the 7725A? I said, what burial site? And he said, we was on strike. And he goes, you know, we all go our separate ways. He said, I become a safety guy, and said, one of my friends become a truck driver, and we were out on strike. And he said, Carl, he said, we're burying radioactive material underneath the foundation in this new building where Hallow is going to be right now. So, Carl, let's see, longest serving trustee member of the local union executive board, longest serving shift safety officer, longest serving secretary treasurer of the Atomic Energy Workers Council, longest serving president of the Atomic Energy Workers Council, served 40 years as a certified occupational safety health administrator, certified OSHA accident investigator, served 2 years as the alternate local union safety officer. 45 years. My friends, that's how you do it. That is how you do it. You serve, you serve, you serve, you serve, and they do not serve. And Carl Hartley said, another one, he said, guys digging, they didn't put the anodes around this building and everything rusted. So I'll make this quick. Guys called in and said, fix that sewer under there. And they said, well, we did. So what do you want us to do with that truck underneath there we just dug up? So they're over the emergency operations center and said, a truck? I said, yeah, we're looking right in the windshield of the thing. So we know what a truck is. It's sure in the sewer system. So they said, well, fix the sewer and just bury the thing. So you got 2 additional burial sites on the plant that I went to the NRC, and the NRC says they called the house, 10 people on the phone. And I said, you all know anything? I don't know. I said, we do. And I said, Carl Hartley tells me that it's the truth. And I said, you know, you all, you got a problem. I said, you're always there on Doe's hand. You're always right there at their beck and call. You do their bidding. I said, you know anything about the fire you guys covered up in December 9th, 1999, December 9th? He said, no. I said, well, we do. We've got a 2.5-hour confession from a man that says they put 50 pounds of chlorotrifluoride through the system and burn it to the ground. Now, there were Russians on site. There was no rule out espionage. There was no rule out arson. So the man tells, and then I start finding other people. Tom Sexton said, me and Jack Tooley was with Charlie Cox from the NRC, and Charlie was a mechanical engineer standing up above the top of the purge and said, what the hell blew this up? So Tooley says, I think I know. And he said, are you on the investigation team? He said, no, they don't want me on the investigation team, because he was the go-to guy in the 326 that knew more than anybody. And don't kid yourself, my friend. There are whispering circles and safety, and guys said, hey, we burnt the plant down. So they bring in Bill Landrum, and he's going to talk to the tribal trust in there. And Sexton's there, and he'd been a fireman. He'd come there to ES&H by the way, a fireman. They said, Sexton, you get out. This is from Tom. He told me, he said, get out. He said, what are you going to talk about? He said, I told you to get out. So before he can get out, Landrum says, I know what's in that report, but I know what's not going to be in that report. If we tell the government we lost control of this cascade and that COF3 was put through this building, he said, we may as well just turn the keys over to them. So we got burial sites under 725A. 31 proposals was put on the table to refit the 326. They turned them all down. USEC investigated. They said that the top of the purge was 7%, and anybody that knew anything knew it was 60 to 80% assay. So NRC should never, under the agreement, been doing that investigation. And they knew because Charlie Cox, so they lied to the Congress and covered up the fire. 31 proposals. They waited 2 years and went cold iron and started the buzzword, we ceased operations. I said, you sure did. You ceased them in a great way. So we're talking felonies that are going on here at the plant. And there's nobody investigating them. The regulator is a perpetrator. Anybody that stands up, and when I testified in front of the United States Senate, they gave me a book. It was full of unsolicited letters of people that had been thumbed down by the Department of Energy. They've spent over $1 billion to come after people that spoke out against them. Threatened me. That's why I'm a nurse. I'm a nurse now. I walked off the job 31 years. They threatened to take me off the job. 2 guys, one spitting in my face, one here like this how many of you have had your hands up on your job? And I'm not talking about home when your wife puts you in the 3rd degree. I'm talking about on your job. You say, and I'm talking. I'm a fighter. I fought, I boxed, I've hand-to-hand combat, I've done all that. But there comes a time, I said, you're wrong, get somebody here. So I walked out of that plant after 31 years. They even come and hammered me on my unemployment, but I become a nurse. And now I take care of Chick Lawson, and that's the best job I ever had. I'm not going to go through all this, but I'm telling you that we have the documents. We have the documents. Elizabeth Tenney given a report in 1996, and she says, well, there is an area of perjury in the 326. And I said, right words, you just spelled it wrong. And I said, that's a fact. Lied to the Congress. They lied to the Senate. We went up there, was barricaded with weapons the night before I testified in the Senate because Fred Thompson told what we were going to say the next day and was trying to scare us, but I don't scare too easy. And I walked the point all night with the .38 caliber in my hand, and then I testified the next day, and they undershot me with a false report. Doe delivered it. They changed my medical records. I have 2 sets. They changed the ACR documents. They changed my medical records and dosimetry records. And then, like Chick says, they go up to Health and Human Services. CDC found it. They found the hidden logs, and Herman Potter and Chick was present. And they said, Chick says, get the logs, we'd like to see them. So they get the logs, and when Chick, he's a good investigator, he said, get the other set. We know you got them. So the guy looks and says, get the other logs. So in front of 2 CDC investigators, Stephen Aaronholtz and John Cardarelli, they produce a hidden set of logs. Now, you got a mom and pop grocery store or you're driving a semi, you're going to jail right now if you produce 2 sets of books. Not at Piketon. We had a plant manager. I'm going to tell this, Carl. He worked in the 300. He got drunk, come in the 300, danced on the tables. I got my bonus, 1.2. I delivered you guys head on a platter. I got my bonus. They locked him in central files that night. He was a choker. He would throw phones. He choked people. He'd grab them by their privates. This is a guy running a major facility that makes 97% assay. Talk about not letting the guy have the key. But when they destroyed that plant, we lost the ability to make 97% assay warheads. We lost the ability to make 92% nuclear fuel. We lost that. They were shipping, when they tore the plant down, Chick, I'm not stepping on your stuff, but I'm on a roll here. So they had machines, compressors full of 97% assay. The guy comes and it's spilling out like tide. They capped them and shipped them as spare parts. Where is that material? Who shipped it? It went right through your community. You wonder how you get sick. That's how you get sick. So they shipped this material out. Daniel Poneman, who's over Citrus, was Undersecretary of Energy. What's going on here? Why is this guy such a Manchurian candidate favorite son? You know, no one looks at him. And I might be putting a bullseye on my back by even saying it. We've been threatened. I'm not laying down. I'm not going to shut up. We've got the documents. These people know it. I gave J.D. Vance a paper called The Holy Grail. And everybody, you know what the Holy Grail is. So Brian Gray had been a seminary student, the guy that come to get the documents. And he says, what's the Holy Grail? I said, well, what's it to you? He said, well, it's the thing that changes everything. I said, yes, that's true. He said, what's your Holy Grail? I said, 10 CFR Part 76. You had to have a certificate of compliance in order to go private. The first one, USEC failed. The second one, they failed again. And if you'd read a report, it was like a comedy. We spent $300 million. We got to get this right in 2 weeks. I'm not kidding you. And then some guy goes, man, I like this meeting, and we ought to have some more of these. And these guys were ready to commit suicide because they knew their job was gone. In steps Daniel Poneman again with Madeleine Albright and just awards them their contract, a multi-billion-dollar international contract, just gives it to them. I said, hell, Chick, you reckon we ought to get a pickup truck and go down and see if we can get some uranium? You know, maybe they'll give us some. You know, no, they like Daniel Poneman. He was put into office by the National Security Council. And you think, well, who's against me? Who's against me? We had Bobby Vaughn. He FOIA'd the Clinton Library on the privatization of nuclear. CIA, NSA, it's all, everything that we do gets flagged, stopped. Senator Brown, where are you? I don't know. He's not here. And anyway, we go to Washington. Senator Brown, we went to Markey. We went to Rand Paul, threw us out of his office. So Brown goes, how about you staying over another day? I said, Sharon, we don't have 2 pennies we had to have somebody donate suits to us. We don't have 2 pennies. I said, hell, let's stay. Come to the coffee. So he's in there and big room about like this. So it's like the parting of the Red Sea. He runs right to me and Chick. He goes, I hear you. I hear you. I said, do you? Do you hear us? Well, I do. I said, well, good. I said, what do you hear? He said, well, I've seen the dossier. They were running a dossier on me and Chick. And he said, and he put his finger out like this, and I said, did you like it? Did you like it? He said, well, I don't think you're the ignorant hillbilly they say you are. I said, oh, yeah, I am. Don't you take that from us. Hell, that's all we got left down where we live. I said, don't take that from us. And so Doug, I'm trying to think of his aide's name, Babcock. We're going, what'd you do with them documents? What'd you do with them documents we gave you? Well, so-and-so left, and they took them. I said, here's you another copy. And we're going and holding them. He started to grab them. He said, not so fast. You're going to sign for these. We got assigned where he got the documents. But I'm telling you, we meet Bob Alvarez outside the Senate. And I had sent Bob Alvarez a box of documents that should have put any good criminal in jail. So we get up there, and here's Herman Potter. We just come off the Senate floor, and he says, this is Bob Alvarez. And I got my bodyguard with me. I said, that's the guy you got busted for pot. They busted Bob Alvarez for pot because he was going to help the union. They didn't like his mouth, just like they got rid of Anne Marie White. Anybody that gets in their way, I don't care if you're a young kid in school, they'll run over you to get what they want. Am I lying? You know it. And they're doing it. And they're lying to these workers out here. And they're telling them, oh, they're going to shut the plant down. We want it cleaned up, but my God, don't kill us all to do it. Don't steal S&M. $144,000 an ounce for that S&M. Where is it? Where is it? We went to the FBI, Cincinnati. The guy goes, how dare you go to Jeff Sessions and go around me? I said, well, you're not all that. Who you think you are? And we were SWAT. And I said, hell, we met you in the field. We spanked your ass. I said, you're not all that. I said, if we had the money you had, we'd had these people put in jail. So we tell them, we show them. We went to the DOJ. They're stealing S&M. They're diverting S&M. Look up this, write this down and remember it, because they talked about Apollo, Pennsylvania. There's an issue called, an incident called Apollo Numec incident, the Apollo Numec incident. And that Apollo Numec incident, Portsmouth, now you say, well, oh, that's impossible. No one steal uranium. Portsmouth sent 97% assay to this man. He was Jewish. He was a brilliant man. He had made the Nautilus sub. They sent 600 kg, and he claimed 200 kg were floor sweepings. And now the Israelis have a bomb that come from Portsmouth. 4 presidencies. Somebody's telling me about tolling. Well, statute of limitation. I said, hell, it ain't stopped. It's not legacy, it's standard operating procedure. Steal, run over, intimidate, hurt. And that's what they're doing. And they're doing it every day. And then they run stooges out. And if you was lucky enough to see Dwayne Pullman catch Ike White before he went out the door, and he says, is there plutonium at Portsmouth? And Ike White says, plutonium? He said, yes, is there plutonium at Portsmouth? Well, that plant was designed to process uranium. I said, is there plutonium at Portsmouth? Well, I don't know that. I said, hell, everybody else did. The janitors, how long we known it, Vida? Elizabeth Tinnock said, oh, there's no plutonium. Vida had her in 95 up against the wall. Said, you don't know what you're talking about, and you're on the privatization committee. You don't know that the top of the purge is 70 to 80%. How in the hell can you do your job? You're very pompous in what you do, but you know nothing. And I said, Ike White is going places in Dove. He don't know nothing. He don't know nothing. He is destined to be the Secretary of Energy, I'm sure, because he wouldn't say plutonium or crap if he had a mouthful. And he is a little stooge, in my opinion. But you watch that film, you'll see. And they threw a good woman out of her job. And like I said, she's tougher than pine knot. I'd like to meet her. She started her own distillery. I said, I'd have a drink with you. I said, I don't want to fight with you, but I'm done. I've said enough. But I got all these documents that I'm telling you, this is not horse bit stories. I've got documents to back everything that we say. If we get these on the table in a fact-finding federal hearing, someone should be in jail. And these people surely should get some letter in their file of the nonfeasance, malfeasance. What do you call that? I was a city councilman for 8 years. You serve. That's your job. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeff Walburn. And you talked about a distillery and so forth, and I can assure you that Jeff was stone cold sober, okay? And now, Chick, we want to invite Chick to come back up and finish your talk and tell your story, please. Chick Lawson.
Not only that was that plutonium, and like Vina said, if you look at the 1999 Comfort Inn meeting with David Michaels, in there he states that they were processed, they were bringing in plutonium-laced material 1953 and 54. That again was never told to the unions. And also you'll find that there was also the report, the Tiger Team report, when they were trying to get ready for, and that was on that one thing I had, but I don't know what happened to it. But basically what it was, on page 10 of that slide, it shows part of the Tiger Team report, and it's got a big X in it, okay? And I'm not here to fight with any union. I'm just saying facts. When they brought that draft in, what they said was, they said, we can't have that in report because it was some of our people helped your salary people wire around the radiation alarms. So all the seals were leaking. They could not duplicate, repair them quick enough. Now, the problem with that is you got people inside these buildings. We're talking 80-foot tall building, over a quarter mile wide, over half mile long. What, 300 and some acres under roof. That material, we were ingesting it, we were breathing it, we were eating it, sucking it in with our mouths. I spent 16 hours a day working in them buildings doing my protection that I was supposed to do. So what's happening is you had giant exhaust fans that run along both sides of all the process buildings. So those exhaust fans are sucking that uranium and transuranics, your heavy metals, that's your plutonium, cesium, americium, and all those things, out again to the atmosphere. And then with the midnight rockets and them jettisoning that to the atmosphere on midnight shift, that was the really bad stuff. So all these things are happening. People say, well, how did that get here? And people, and how can I say it? Think of a hot air balloon. This is the way I described it when I was down at OU. If your wind currents only go east to west, the balloon could only go one way. That's the only way it could go. But if you're a pilot, as my buddy back there is, you know you got different wind currents going different directions everywhere up in the upper atmosphere. Give you an example. If it was always blowing west, you'll hear a jet coming back from California say, oh, we got a good tailwind, we made time today. And you'll hear the Air Force guys say that. Because you have multiple wind currents blowing every different direction. So if you want to go north in that balloon, you go up until you find north and then where you go. Well, same thing with using this jet air express system that they use to expel these transuranics. That's what happened. And that's why you see it at all the monitors all the way around the plant, because of the wind currents. The lower wind current, yes, we have a predominant, but you also have the effect. You got to take into the effect of the hills that surround this area. They're almost like a wind tunnel, and it causes that effect. The Apollo Numek affair that he had mentioned, that was something that was involved with the government. They wanted them to have it. And you also have and I don't know if Jeff mentioned it, about the gentleman from Taiwan that designed the waste cell system. Okay, that sounds like a great thing, 1,000-year rubber liner, but he didn't know that plutonium had a half-life of 24,100 years. And when I brought that up, he goes, we'll be dead in 1,000 years. I said, but what about our descendants? What about them? He goes, well, I said, are the other ones leaking? Well, we have a problem. And the problem is the groundhogs are burrowing holes through the other ones already at Fernald Mound. So where's that going? It's going out in the water. So that's a problem. I said, he goes, well, we're going to fix that. And I did. I admit I got a little bit smart alecky with him. I said, well, have you contacted Dr. Doolittle? Has he taught you how to speak groundhog? I mean, that's just the way I approached it, because this is stupid. This is stupidity. These are supposed to be scientists. So he goes on. So Jeff asked him, he says, you guys must be making a lot of money off this for you to come from Taiwan. He goes, well, we're doing okay. He says, they are trading the material in the 326 building for the work. Now, I'm just going to speculate. In my opinion, does that mean that Taiwan now has nuclear material to make nuclear weapons? You figure that one out yourself. There's a lot of things going on that the public and the county officials and the state officials do not have a clue. And I'm going to tell you right now, Jeff and I, when he said documents, literally, we probably have close to 6,000 documents, maybe more. We are finding stuff still today. DOE, it's making them crazy because they cannot figure out how we get this kind of information. And we look for it in 2s and 3s. And once we find it 2 times, we know there's going to be a 3rd one there somewhere. And then we'll find out. And that's how we substantiate everything. Most of the records we have that we talk about, they're DOE's records. Just about all of them are DOE records or NRC records. The testimonies. When we went to the FBI on the theft of the special nuclear material, they brought in people to meet with us in Portsmouth at the FBI office there. We gave them a thumb drive of who did it, how they did it, why, the whole bit. And that's when we asked them about the Apollo Numek. They'd never heard of it. I said, well, here's that report because I figured you didn't know. And we gave it to them. They'd never seen it before. That's also tied into the Karen Silkwood death from Kerr McGee because they needed plutonium. And plutonium was missing. She got a hold of some documents that she didn't realize what they were. She was taking all these documents to the New York Times, and that's the night she got killed. And I won't go into a whole lot of that, but I've talked with people that know. Jeff and I have made a lot of ties with people within the government that we trust, and they trust us. So some names I do not use. But I will say this. There's a congressman, federal, that has admitted that DOE in a closed-door meeting admitted to him that all Southern Ohio is now radioactive. And it's killing them because they can't figure out how we're getting the information. But I don't know what else we can tell you. And I appreciate County Commissioner being here tonight. But we have, and I'm not from Pike County, I live in Scioto County, but I have taken information to Scioto County. None of them's here. This affects 7 counties. Terry Johnson called his office. He lives inside of the county. Where's he at? Well, he doesn't represent us anymore because of redistribution. Well, I'm sorry, you should be here anyway. This is about the state. Just because we're Appalachian, that doesn't mean we're stupid or ignorant. And I think it's sort of almost, I look at it as a badge of honor. And he was not joking when he said they referred to us as the ignorant Appalachian hillbillies. And by the way, they say you're illiterate. And my answer to him was, I said, who runs your Star Wars program? He goes, well, I don't know. I said, you should. He's an ignorant Appalachian hillbilly, graduated from Valley High School. He's the top laser scientist in the world. But you think we're all ignorant down here. I said, this is stupid. And you people have no concern. They consider us expendable. Now, that's the term that I learned in the military. I knew I was expendable in the work that I did. But that's the way they look at us. They look at us as expendable. We're considered throwaways. There's no other way to say it nicely. I can say it more colorful, but I don't talk that way. If anybody has any questions they want to ask me, I'll be more than happy to try to answer anything I can on these exposures. Yes, sir.
Have you tried to contact the press at all on any of these stories?
We have contacted, Wall Street Journal did an article on us. It was a full-page article in their environmental section. We have contacted New York Times. We've contacted just about everybody you can think of. But the problem we have, the only one that has stayed tried and true is Channel 12 News. They have come forward on everything. He's taken a lot of bad heat for what he's doing, but he's looking out for the people. He's looking out for the people. And he takes his job serious because he cares about the people that he's reporting to. And I appreciate everything he's done. We've become good friends over the years. This is a hard time for me, and I'm going to be honest with you. It's all I can do right now to keep from crying. Because what they have done to my family, it's really hard for me. I'm watching my daughter, 35 years old, 2 kids, 15-month-old baby, going through cancer. She has a blood clot disorder that now the doctor thinks from the radiation. She has lived in our house almost her entire life and now lives with us again. Then I watch my son with a tumor in the center of his brain. Folks, that's hard to deal with. And then I have DOE tell me they've got the report on my house and they say it doesn't mean anything. Come down and sleep in my house for a while. They won't do that. They won't come near my house. I'm outside their 6 miles. They don't want to admit to it because it's going to cause them a problem. That ACER that I gave you, what's important about that ACER? Otway, Ohio, is 14 miles southwest of the plant. The levels there at that monitor sets exactly 1 mile behind Northwest School at 13 miles. In my opinion, that school is highly radioactive because the amount of radiation on those monitor reports. If you look at Camp Creek, Ohio, that monitor, right down the road here on 104, you're looking at air, water, and soil samples. If you look at the one thereby between Valley and the prison, you're looking at plutonium and U-234 in the water sediment samples there. They know it's out past that. AML leukemia is a radiation-induced leukemia. That's a fact. Neuroblastoma brain cancer is radiation-induced. That's a fact. That's scientific fact. That's not me saying it. That's people who do the studies on these things. But I see it affecting my kids. I've got a daughter, not only does she have cancer, she has a tumor, if you can imagine, that goes all the way around her spine and her nervous system. Do you know what that does to your system when someone touches you? You feel things a whole lot different than anybody else. And it's not very pleasant. And with her blood clotting disorder that they believe is from the radiation, she's got a blood clot in her brainstem that when it busts, I lose her. It's hard for me to say these things, but people need to know. And now my wife, of almost 37 years, she has thyroid issues. There's no doubt in my mind it's from the technetium-99 because of all, like Dr. Ketterer said, all the monitors, all the way around the plant. Forget that prevailing wind stuff. How did it get to all the monitors that the levels were almost as high? DOE is lying. And I will say that publicly. When I testified at the Ohio EPA meeting, an individual walked up to me and says, Mr. Lawson, you know this is a sworn testimony. I said, I know that. You got court reporters in here. He said, you realize you called DOE a liar? I said, yes, I do. I meant to say that because they are lying. And not only that, I said, you're lying because you took their test results as a fact and you did no test on your own. None. He goes, you can be sued for defamation of character. I said, well, I'm sort of like Bear Rabbit, so just throw me in that thicket. Because I used DOE documents. I said, throw me into it, let's go to court. I said, you think I'm joking? I said, sue me. I'm ready. I've got about 6,000 documents that says that. Jeff and I do. We can show things that people cannot imagine. If we went through everything that we had, and you had the time to sit in here, even 4 hours worth, the things that you will hear, it would look like a Tom Clancy whodunit book because it looks like a conspiracy theory, but it's not. People have died because of the illnesses. What they've done is criminal, and that's what I told Ohio EPA. I said, you're stepping all over misprision the felony here because you have abated and helped them spin the lie. NIOSH, and I'm going to say this, they helped them lie. NIOSH had seen the false logbook and accepted it as real on a prior incident before I went in with them. But when I asked for the real logbook, they pretended that they had never seen it before and found out they had, that Dr. Stephen Ehrenholz had seen that report. Now, here's where the criminal part comes in. When they published their findings, they did not mention those false logbooks. They did not mention the false readings on the dosimeter badges. To me, that's criminal. It's supposed to be unbiased investigation. Now, I will say this, and this is what their people said in the meeting. It's not in our purview. And I said, well, I understand what purview mean. I worked as a federal officer. I said, but it is in your purview just the same as it is in OSHA. When you find a criminal act, you are supposed to stop your investigation. That's the law. Then you call in the appropriate authority. If it's a state problem, then you bring in the state police, whoever it is that's going to investigate. If it's federal, like at our site, it would be the FBI. Or on the arson case, it would be probably U.S. Marshal or ATF, because they usually do the marshals, that type of investigation. They didn't do that. They said, oh, it's not in our purview, we don't care. They didn't care that they destroyed 40 years worth of radiation records. That's illegal. By law, they have to keep them for 30 years and 1 day. At day 30 years and 2 days, they can destroy that one paper. These are things that we're telling you. Don't believe what they say until you start researching their own records, because they lie and they don't care. They're not held accountable, and that's the problem I have. They are never held accountable for their lies or what they tell people. Just like these kids being sick. You don't hear them saying with Jeremy Davis and all them getting up and say, well, the cesium's from a smoke detector that somebody threw in the creek. Oh, give me a break. And then to say, well, it's all fallout. Michael knows it's not. I knew it wasn't. I seen their reports. Now, I'm not as smart as Michael, and I'm even going to go there because he's a brilliant man. But I can read. I'm not the illiterate person they say I am. But if anybody else has any other questions, I'll try to answer them. That's it for me.
Okay, well, this concludes our marathon forum for today. And thank you for all of those who have stayed this long. I do want to say that the United States Office of Workers' Compensation Programs have paid out $1.2 billion for claims of Portsmouth workers and family members as of October 2022. But only 1 in 4 applications were accepted by the Department of Energy for each person receiving payments. So for each person that received a payment, there's 3 that have been denied. So, and there's no mechanism of compensation for the residents that are living off-site, only for the workers there. So this is true for other nuclear sites as well. And I'd like to mention that Thursday, June 15th, there's going to be a meeting on the reutilization of the Portsmouth facility at Waverly Health Department. And that's at 1 p.m., same time next Saturday as this was this Saturday. The address there is 116 South Market Street in Waverly. So we encourage people, everybody who's still watching on YouTube, and those who are here to attend, or hopefully that will be recorded and you can watch that for those that are on YouTube. Okay, so it's Thursday, June 15th, a week from today, at the Waverly Health Department, and the address is 115 South Market Street in Waverly.
Let me add one thing. She talked about the payout. Here's a problem with this payout with the Department of Labor. They are committing insurance fraud. And I mean that literally, because Jeff and I, and Paul, we filed a first purveyor on that. When we discovered how many were turned down, and the reason they're turned down is because they destroyed our records at the plant. When NIOSH came in to do the assessment to try to refigure out what we made, they said, what do you make here? And DOE told them, well, we only make 3 to 5% assay now because everything else wasn't running. That was a lie. They knew we made 97% assay. So they based their findings of radiation on 3 to 5% assay. Now the pipes were still full. You're having massive subcritical reactions in all the buildings, which is throwing off massive amounts of gamma and neutron. They didn't figure that. So, and it's called, the system they use is called Monte Carlo configuration. That's what they use to figure out the odds on Super Bowl, horse races, and everything else. And that's what NIOSH uses to figure out our dose rates. That's why there's so many turndowns. Yes.
Piketon, Oak Ridge, and Paducah is an SEC site. They are not even supposed to be doing dose on these workers because they destroyed our records. They didn't keep records, and so when you die or your family dies, they're redosing all these people. One guy, they dosed his mother at 29%. 3 months later, they dosed her at 12%. But they're not supposed to be dosing these Piketon workers because we are a special exposure profile. And NIOSH knows that. And every time I call NIOSH for some of these workers, they say, oh, you're not a special exposure cohort. I said, ask Denise Roth. So I called her up and told her what was going on here and gave her 4 or 5 workers to caution here, and they're not responding back to the workers.
But that's just something I want to add. This to me is insurance fraud. And it could be proven. I don't have the money to do it, but it could be proven by pulling the records. And that's why we filed the first purveyor on it. And with the Justice Department, Department of Labor, Department of Energy. So that has been filed through us. So,
Check.
Yes.
On Tuesday, I went to the pulmonologist for my COPD.
Yes.
She added a new medication for me. It's supposed to go through my white card, Department of Labor card. And I went to CVS today to see why they hadn't told me it was ready. They went in there and said the DOL was declining filling the prescription for the new breathing medicine. So I know I gotta check that out, so I know what's going on, but
Well, under their new system now that they've come up with, some of these things have to be pre-approved. Give you an example, because I'm on oxygen 24/7. I have beryllium disease. It took me 10 years fighting them to get for my beryllium disease. My lungs are impaired at 74%. Basically, I'm going to die if I live long enough. I will suffocate to death. That's what's going to happen to me. That's a fact. But the oxygen affects my eyes. It dries my eyes out. So I have to buy a special drops. It's $600 for those drops. Sometimes $900. Depends on where they get it from. I can't afford that. So what I have to do, the Department of Labor won't pay for it. I have to get it pre-approved every 6 months to get that. This is like the medicines for my oxygen. I'm on 3 different types of inhalers and different airway disease medicine. And with my oxygen and everything, we're looking probably, I looked at the bill one time and figured out, it's almost $4,000, just a little under $4,000 a month. I couldn't afford to pay that. I couldn't do it. Not being, no longer working. My insurance won't cover it. And that's the only thing that's keeping me alive. I probably should say that because I'll probably stop it.
on my Medicare card,
Yeah.
DOL wasn't gonna pay for it.
But that's probably why you have to get the doctor to write a new special approval, and they have to approve it. That's what happened with me on a couple of my new ones.
Just an inhaler called Kelleher, which you probably have.
My Spiriva, I think it's $900 for the Spiriva that I have to use. That's a lot of money for an inhaler. Anybody else? Okay.